Ed, who's your favorite football team?
The New York Giants. Born and raised in the area, so I'm a home team guy.
Fair play. Chris, Jim, do either of you watch any NFL?
I used to
American
watch it all the
football?
time. I was a Redskins fan.
You can't call them that anymore, can you?
You can't
But
call
when
them
I was a
anymore.
fan, you could call them that. So I'm sticking with it.
Now they're the commies. They found a way
Yeah.
to. Although I suspect that going into next year they're going to go back to the Washington football team. Just a hunch.
Yeah. No, I used to watch Super Bowl every year. Doug Williams. Yeah, back in the day, it's good stuff. When I was young enough to stay up until 5 o'clock in the morning watching it and not suffer the next day.
Yeah, I remember I was in London was it 4 years ago? When my wife and I got engaged. So yeah, I guess it was about 5 years ago now. And I remember staying up like the first round of games like kicked off at like 7 o'clock at night London time, and I'm like watching these, and I'm like, next thing you know, I'm watching the night game, like the night game from here, but the night game there, and it starts at like 5 a.m. It's like, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could kick people out of the comments. Dang it. We got Carl. All right. Just kidding, Carl. We love you. Jim, go ahead.
I'd like to welcome Ed to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure.
I would say that out of the four of us, I mean, we don't need to introduce the topics for today. I don't think. I think the whole world's kind of exploded in the last week or two with what's going on with the WPA and Matchroom. And out of the four of us, I think Ed, in his function as a board member of the BCA, it's his job to know the ins and outs of what happens within the WPA and what effect they have and their usefulness or otherwise. So thanks for joining us, Ed. For the majority of this conversation, I'm going to actually talk to you if you're the WPA, which you might not like. But I know you're one of the guys. A lot of people are banging down on the WPA and saying it's all trash and they should go. But you're one of the ones that's more down the line of there can be common ground here. Explain your position.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much. I had a frog in my throat earlier. Thank you very much for having me on the show, guys. I know I'm very active in the chat. Just want to stir up the conversation in the chat rooms for most of the time. So those are lovingly digs for anyone that doesn't understand text. Text doesn't show inflection. But like I said, we're all brethren in the game, and I preach the same thing all the time. Everyone has a role to play. I mean, we were just talking about the NFL. Who is the governing body of the NFL? Does anyone know? Nope. It's the International Federation of American Football. IFAF, IFAF, I believe it is, right? Without looking it up on your computers. I hear arguments of what is WPA? We never heard of them. We don't know what they do. I don't want to use the term ignorance, but an unfamiliarity of a certain organization doesn't mean that they're inactive. The WPA's biggest fault in my terms, or my opinion, their flaw has been a lack of not even transparency, but more so being in the spotlight or being in the know. They don't like to brag. They just get things done. They function. There's a lot of things that they work with the federations. And I'm not here to speak on behalf of the WPA. I am a board member of the BCA. Does anyone know that I was a board member of the BCA? I mean, I'm very involved in the pool world. Everyone sees me at events all the time. I don't boast and say, oh, yeah, I'm a board member or try to toot my horn. I just serve, and it's a voluntary position. I went uncontested in the pool room owners category, or the play category it is. The board can sit. Let me ask you a question. How many board members sit on the board of the BCA? Let's keep it local. Well, two of us here are not local, right? But let's start with the BCA as a federation that I can speak on, that I'm more familiar with. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of WPA, so I'll stay in my lane and stick with what I know. But how many board members sit on the board of the BCA, and what do they constitute of? No one knows.
I'm going to say 7 because I saw him stick his fingers up, but
okay. I can't see. I only see the two of you. I don't know if my screen is off or settings on my connection here are different. But 9, the total of 9. It used to be 11. We brought it down to 9 because there are too many disagreements, and getting 9 heads in one room to agree on something, to pass, bylaws or anything like that, make any changes is nearly impossible. Out of those 9 people that sit on the board, 5 of them are manufacturers. 3 of them are retailers. I'm sorry, 4 of them are retailers. and one is me, a pool room owner. So for 20, 30 years, I've been asking the same exact question. What in the world has the BCA done for pool? Or what in the world has the WPA done for pool? Well, pool is a lot broader of a spectrum than just what we've constituted as or justify it as from a player's perspective. Now, I'm a player before I'm a room owner. I didn't buy Sandcastle Billiards, which was Sharky Beast, for a year before failing because I wanted to get into a good business venture. I bought it out of my heart because the pool room was closing and I didn't want to see our players' room closed down. So I was working at the Board of Education in the IT field and just did it as a side venture for a couple of years and was too tired doing both and insurance on the side. So I took a break, and a 2 to 3 year break from the real workforce got me back involved in pool again and rekindled my love for the sport. So there's an angst out there amongst the general population just because they are unaware of what the WPA does or the BCA does, that nothing is being done. Are hands tied in certain situations with WADA and things like that? Absolutely, of course. Is the WPA perfect? By far not. But what are we doing to change things? There's a new board on the BCA, which is the most play-centric board that we've had in 12, maybe 14 years now. I always get mixed up with that blank year of COVID, 2 years of COVID. There have been several things brought to the committees. I'm chairman of the play committee for obvious reasons. Our current president, our current chairman of the board is the vice president of Predator. There's a very big hat to separate personal duties at Sandcastle Billiards or Predator or whomever else. We had the chairman previously, 2 times ago, was Ivan Lee of Simonis Cloth and Aramis Balls. Do we choose sides? No, we take off our hat and we act in the best interest of the game, first and foremost. Players, secondly, from my play side perspective. And why do I say the game first and players secondly? Not all players are right. We all have our own opinions. However, players also come and go. So we have to plan for the mistakes of the past and plan to prevent those same mistakes from repeating in the future. Players of today are concerned with the problems of today. Once they retire, where do they go? What 401k do we have for them? What health benefits do we have?
They go to tour with your boy Earl Strickland and make $7,000 a month touring across the country. You did that just for me, didn't you?
I didn't have any prep time, folks. Folks, I had no prep time for this interview. So I just got about an hour, 45 minutes while I'm running errands. Literally just ran home, came in to be with you guys because I do enjoy it. And let me thank you guys for putting together this podcast. It's not easy to put yourselves out there. And same thing with Windows Open. I'm on there. I'm in the chat, stirring things up all the time as well. But to bring awareness to things is one thing, a personal gripe I've had with the BCA. And I'm trying to look at some proper clowns here. Thanks, Darren.
Darren and Carl promised me they'd be in the chat causing trouble, so here you go.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And that's what it is. That's the beauty of this game. It's a subculture. It's a brotherhood. We dine with each other. We know each other's families. We spend time with each other more than we spend with our own families. So is it a WPA versus Matchroom thing for me? No. Was it ever even a Matchroom versus Predator thing? No. That's just the unfamiliarity of the general public because there's not enough information out there from all parties stating what is being done. Do we know that there's a nationwide instructors program going on with the BCA for instructors teaching kids for free at designated BCA pool rooms coming up in the future? No, we don't talk about it. We just do it. If I may be candid for a moment here, I have a saying or a T-shirt slogan I made a long time ago. Everyone wants to put in their 2 cents, but no one wants to put up $1. And dollars doesn't have to be monetary. It could be just efforts and time and putting things in. I am one of 9 volunteers that serve on that board. Everyone's in the chat room, everyone's staying here, and this and that. 125 euro fees call, I don't know about. So you have to ask someone else. I'm not qualified to answer that.
Well, let me ask you this then. Why, if somebody organizes a tournament, a promoter or an entity organizes a tournament, why would they go to the WPA? Why should they go to the WPA? And when would they be required to go to the WPA to get sanctioning?
First, I'm loving these comments in the chat. All right, first, they keep grabbing my eye. These are all friends, of course. Why do I agree to this?
I thought I was
Now,
easily distracted.
first, yeah, that's the only thing I see on my screen is mainly that. But I'll just block that off. The reason to go in WPA, first off, before we get to the reason, what qualifies you to put together an event and what are you offering the players? So let's talk, it is actually about the players, right? The benefit, overall benefit of the game for players past, present, and future. What are you offering for the players? I personally find myself or claim to be indifferent in choosing any side. I try to work with everyone. As anyone that knows my track record for the last, I hate to say it now, 30 years, in the industry, but let's say mainly the last 20 years in the industry, I've tried to work with Matchroom, but when the question of guaranteeing money came up and I was questioned and asked to put more money in on top of the money I was losing, I posed a simple question as far as will Matchroom be willing to suffice any kind of guaranteed prize money if players don't show up, because the prestige of having that 9-ball stamp on the event guarantees a full field, which we all know. First Sandcastle Open, I was the first to join up, didn't fill up. 20 some odd players failed to show up. So now I'm closing down my business for 3 days, putting money out of pocket on top isn't added, pissing off all my regular customers that just want to play on their favorite table on a regular basis, for people that want to come around once a year. And then I ask a simple question of, hey, can you help out? Let's give these players that traveled out here the money they deserve. Crickets. So I don't buy into the whole, we're doing it for the players and we're doing it for all that. Is it a good thing? Absolutely. Am I here to knock Matchroom? Not at all. I think Matchroom is great at promotion and marketing. I think WPA is great. Getting back to your question, WPA is greater at being not consistent, but ensuring consistency across the board fairly and equally for a free enterprise, open for all companies to join in and do business as they have been doing for the last 20 years. Matchroom's been around for 30 years, right? They've had Moscone Cup for how many years? US Open only for a few.
Years, yeah. But what am I getting for my money? If I go to the WPA or any sanctioned body, it doesn't matter what sport. I go to I have my sport, I want to run an event, I go to a sanctioning body, I pay them the sanctioning fee. Why not just not pay them the sanctioning fee and run it unsanctioned? What is the difference between the two? What do I get that for my money that if I don't pay that money, I don't get?
Okay, again, I can't speak for WPA, but for the BCA and whatever. And my belief is that you're part of a larger, cohesive, cooperating network of people that are there for the game. You're supporting the industry in return as making a name for yourself or having an event or so forth. And that's another fine line that is hard for people to see. Governing bodies are not event coordinators. Promoters are event coordinators. You know, what are you getting for your money? I can't answer that 100% as far as I'm not well versed enough to speak on that. You know, what are you getting for your money? You're not going to get an immediate return. You're going to get allocations. You're going to get that sanctioning allows your players to get opportunities in the future above and beyond your local regional federations capabilities.
So basically, you're talking about ranking.
Well, not necessarily just ranking and opportunities.
Ranking points are important for future possibilities. Then you're right. So I go to the WPA. I say I want you to sanction my event. Here's the sanctioning fee. I guarantee this money. I have the added money that's necessary because I believe there's a certain amount of added money necessary. I have that. I want you to sanction it because I want my players to get ranking points.
Along with that, to answer your question more so, is also the support and backing from the multitude of companies that the WPA and the federations do work with for outside funding for those added prize money. You know, if it's a sanctioned event, you're going to get more of the Diamond, Aramis, Simonis support and monetary value there. You know, as far as what I always try to do as an independent person, free of any kind of sponsorships, is, you know, just reach out and try to do it on my own. We know we can't. But, you know, the well only goes so deep and the companies can only put so much in. But they're more apt to give things into something that benefits overall fairly and distributed across multiple disciplines, multiple regions, all open to all players. The only thing that I see with the problem of what's going on now is that lines are getting blurred and duties are getting blurred as far as what are the roles responsible, what are people responsible for, and who does a better job at what. I think they both do a great job. Not a great job, and a good job. No perfect job. No one's perfect. No company is perfect. There's gripes within internally and externally, of course. But I just think we need to bring more awareness that Matchroom is a promotion and marketing company. Their bottom line and their goals are different than the WPA and the federations that are involved. Federations are looking for longevity of the game, and both want to see the game excel, however, for different reasons. So it's not a choice of what are you getting for your dollar. It's what you're getting that's going to have the longevity and the guarantee that you're getting the proper support. And I can dare to say that the term infrastructure. WPA, yes, infrastructure needs to be tightened up, not revamped, but better organized. And cooperation needs to be there.
Ed, let me ask you this question as somebody who's obviously not representing the WPA, but as somebody who's been in the game for 30 plus years, like you said. What do you think is the best way of going at this? Do you think the best way of going at this is just balls to the wall growth at all costs and just get the game as big as it can possibly get to in 3 to 4 years? Or do you think the better way of doing it is just keeping everybody kind of together like the WPA does with the federations and try to lift them all up at once? Because Matchroom is definitely taking the role of, I don't give a crap about anybody else. I don't need to work with anybody else. I'm just going to grow this game as fast as I possibly can. And anybody else who wants to tag along with us, great. Anybody else who isn't interested, see you later. We'll send you a letter when we get to the top.
I don't think it's either one of those two, Nate. I think it's a combination of both. And are they growing the sport, or are they just growing one small fraction and discipline of the sport? What about all the 8-ball players that don't play 9-ball, 10-ball players? One pocket, we're going to get to the popularity and there's differences, of course. What about snooker? I need to do snooker, of course, but what about other disciplines? 3-person.
Well, let's say that 9-ball gets as big as, I don't know. Let's just throw something out there. Baseball worldwide, where it's really popular in some sports. It's not very popular in other sports, but as a whole, it's a pretty popular sport. Let's just go out on a hypothetical and say that 9-ball was as big as baseball worldwide. Are you making then the argument that 10-ball and 8-ball will be irrelevant and nobody cares about them? Because I would say that if 9-ball is popular, that's going to also lift up the rest of the games as well. Not as much, but they're not trying to.
One would think that. One would think, but these are all predictions. But we can look at the past of other organizations that came along and came and went by in a number of years. We had support from the Seminole tribe down in Florida for a tour that was going on. We had the Camel Pro Tour. But once these organizers or promoters go away, or the sponsorship
whatever
goes
happened
away,
to the Camel Pro Tour just as a side note?
Joe Camel is not no longer an accepted taboo.
Your boy Earl. You don't have to lie.
You talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And listen, I always say this: tennis had McEnroe, basketball had Rodman. We have Earl. Okay, just accept it. One of the greats. One of the not so perfect greats, absolutely. But I'm a realist, I speak the facts. But we still have to, respect his game at the time. He's not there as a personality; he's there as a talent. I'll tell you something real quick on Earl, with the whole Mosconi thing. If he had played that first year that he was split up, it would have been a totally different Earl. He was in Sandcastle practicing 6 to 8 hours a day, prepping for that. He was so well prepared. I said it 1,000 times at that time. He looked like he was back in his 20s again, in shape, positive to everything. But when he went over there and got stopped for the COVID exposure, they just took everything out of him. And then should he have been there the next year? It was nice of Matchroom to give him another shot, but he was already, all the wind was taken out of his sail from that whole experience that he wasn't practicing much or as well prepared, and he didn't show up at that. But that's all I'll say about it.
Okay, so the situation we're in now.
So let's get back on track. Yeah, situation at hand.
The situation we're in now is
what's the answer?
The situation we're in now is Matchroom decided they don't want the WPA to sanction their events. They've created this World Professional 9-Ball Pool Corporation, which they've done before. I'll get on to that. They've been here before. The WPA hasn't, but Matchroom has. And now the WPA are saying that they're going to ban, or they're threatening, and they're going to have a meeting on October the 7th to decide and to vote on whether they're going to ban players from WPA events if they play in these non-sanctioned, non-WPA sanctioned events from Matchroom or from anybody else. Not just Matchroom, it's globally for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with it. Remember, I'm a player before I am a room owner or anything else, and lover of the game. I don't think bans should be implemented by either side, nor should that language be included in a newly created contract, more so than a contract that's been around for 50 years, 40 some odd years. You know, I truly feel WPA is being forced into that, and they have no other options, as you know, as they can see at the blink of an eye, right on the top of their head. Schwann's response to that, I think, was just a knee-jerk response to flexing something that he could think of at the moment. But in retrospect, after people meet and after this is all blown up, people look back at things and not speak out of the heat of the moment. Also, Schwann was getting cut off every 5 seconds by our buddy Mike, so he's going to get it thought through. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. I don't agree with that as a course of action. I agree. I see some type of an agreement where Matchroom does their thing, which is a good thing for producing more opportunities for players in more areas, but do it everywhere equally. I mean, how many big events do we have in the U.S. other than the U.S. Open? The international so-called Matchroom events, I'm speaking. How many Matchroom events, not Matchroom stamped events of other people's events, but Matchroom events do we have in the U.S.? Moscone Cup every other year, and the U.S. Open. U.S. players can
allegedly
they are growing it, and it is their intention to grow more into the States because they want the American players to be able to have a ranking without blowing all their money every single year in order to.
Same with the Asian players. Exactly the same with the Asian situation.
Exactly the same with the Asian players.
Okay,
let's say this goes ahead and they vote and say, right, we're going to ban the players. That kills the WPA, right?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so at all.
Okay, I'll give you this scenario. Yeah, the WPA are saying we've got 4.7 million prize money in events on our calendar, even without Matchroom. Matchroom only have 3 million. Yeah, that's the figures that are being thrown out. Same thing was done in the early 90s with the darts, by the way, and that turned out to be a mistake. And so Predator are putting in a lot of that money. Now, if I'm Kareem at Predator, well, I asked the question 5 minutes ago, does a tournament need to be sanctioned? It doesn't. They can choose to not be sanctioned. If they don't want to have the ranking points and they don't want to have the WPA stamp on their posters and all that kind of thing. Now, if the WPA then go to, if Predator go to the WPA and say it's time for us for the year to do our, to make our contracts for the sanctioning of all the Predator 8-ball events, all the Predator 10-ball events, the 2 World Championships, and they say, okay, yeah, it's going to cost you this much. Oh, by the way, here's a list of 150 players that are not allowed to play in any of your events. If I'm Kareem, I say, oh, okay, forget about the sanction. I don't need you. I need these players more than I need you. Because I can't sell my product. I can't sell my tournaments. I can't get the viewership in on my streams. I can't get the viewership into the arena. If you're taking away Shane Van Boning, Joshua Filler, Jason Shaw, Sanchez Ruiz, all the top best guys in the world, nobody's going to come and watch the rest. You're killing my tournament. You're depleting my field. And I'm paying you for the privilege of this? No, forget it. I don't want you sanctioning. And then Predator is no longer a sanctioned event. That's like over $1 million that comes off their list of 4.7 million. They're left with nothing. 14-1 already did it. There's no World 14-1 Championship anymore because Matchroom started, because WPA started meddling in who could play. Now it's the American 14-1. They said, all right, forget it. We don't ask you to sanction us. It's a viable situation that they're in. The other big player at the moment in pool says, hey, I don't want anything to do with you because you're killing me.
Right. No, that's understood. And your point is very valid. However, again, you're blurring the lines between the duties of a promoter versus the duties of a governing body. The governing body is not responsible for putting all those millions of dollars together. They're sanctioning events of other people and promoters doing that, as they have with Matchroom for several years. And there's no reason that Matchroom can't have their own point system. It's just the problem of it being the official point system. That's where I see the problem. It's not as far as them doing things and getting the sanction and getting the stamps and fighting over the players. More opportunities for players need. No one's going to argue. players need more opportunities in more regions, so they don't have to fly across the world, spend 3,000, they come 5th place or better to break even on their venture, right? They also don't need to spend $30,000 a year to get on the Mosconi Cup for a possible $20,000 payday, if they get chosen, if they make it, on an if. These business models have not worked for either organization for several years, or any promotion. The answer that I'd like to see happen is that Matchroom continues doing their events, WPA keeps sanctioning them, no player has to suffer for the decisions or the struggles of the organizations, because the players just get stuck in the middle. They should not be making choices, they should have options. And you have a 3-tiered option where you have, depending on dollar amounts, your top tier events, your second tier events, and your third tier events defined in the BCA and the WPA. The sanction, I think, is $100,000 for tier 1, added money and so forth, where you have a calendar agreed on by both parties that they do not overlap tier 1 events, they do not overlap tier 2 events, they do not overlap tier 3 events. And now the local players that are not the top 10% of players, I mean, the players you mentioned before, what is the percentage of the pool population that those players make up? Less than 10%. So are we only here to appease the 10% of the players? Or are we here to appease all pool players that are chasing their dreams, traveling around the country, spending the same $3,000, that are not sponsored, that need more attention? I personally would rather watch an event, not that I'm saying I don't want to see the big names, but I'm tired of them. I'm joking. But I would like to see an event of the second tier players to see who would make that top echelon next, the up and comers. It would also put a focus on the spotlight. So if we have 3 tiers where we agree not to overlap, the players can choose what tier event they're going to go to based upon their personal skill level, where they feel they have the most chance, or where they feel is the most feasible for them to travel to. Do you agree with that? Would that be a sensible solution?
I agree with that. And what I will give the WPA credit for, one thing that they've said, and I kind of agree with, they have created a structure and a system where players can come through. You know, certainly with it, you don't use the same kind of structure, but within Europe, you know, you have the Euro Tours, the European Championships. There's not a lot of money to be made there. There's none to be made in the European Championships. Zero to be made, and it costs the amount. Don't get me on how much money they make, but there is a system there they get through. The problem is that once they get through the system and they get their government funding for getting medals at European Championships, they get their government fundings for representing their countries and all that kind of thing, that's all great. But once you get to a certain level, there has to be something above that where you then progress on to now you are a professional pool player. Once they've got there, once they've gone over that step towards becoming a professional pool player, they've been left behind. They've been left out to dry by the WPA. And that's the problem. So you're talking about that 10% of players, but that's the 10% of the players that are not being looked after anymore. They've been left out, they're left hung out to dry. They're playing through WPA events all through the year, and there's for a world championship that's held in Qatar, you know, until Matchroom came in the desert where nobody wanted to go and play. But that was basically it. They dangle this carrot of Olympics in front, which nobody gives a crap about in the professional game. None of the top professionals give a damn about the Olympics. It would happen once every 4 years. There would only be a select, maybe 2 players from every country that would be allowed to play. Half the countries, it will be the 2 guys that own a pool cue in the entire country that will be there. And most of the top guys won't get in because there's 2 guys that get picked above them in their country. We already have that in the World Cup of Pool.
Speaking of which, Jim, you want to move to Ecuador with me? Play in the
Sorry?
Olympics? You want to move to Ecuador with me and play in the Olympics?
Exactly. You know, so nobody gives a damn about. So
I agree with you.
Sorry, this carrot has turned greeny, browny, mushy rubbish now. It's a stupid. Nobody cares about the Olympics. Stop dangling that carrot in front of people because it's not going to happen anyway. And even if it does, nobody gives a damn.
I agree with you.
Outside of the people, outside of the people who are still dependent on the federation money, because then that will increase. But the pros shouldn't be dependent on federation money. Niels Feijen shouldn't be going to European Championships every single year to try and get the federation money that comes from the Dutch. He's a professional player. He's a world champion. He's one of the best players in the world. The WPA have done nothing, zero, to make sure that once he becomes a professional and gets that status, that he's looked after.
Have you written this?
That's my issue with the WPA. Matchroom are now doing that. So in my opinion, the WPA, they're not going to change. I don't know how many times they said in the interview, which I agree, he was unprepared. He said some things he shouldn't have said. He probably regrets saying, but one thing he said a couple of times is, "This is the way it's always been." Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable, because the way it's always been has got us into this situation now, where pool has degraded all the way down to now somebody's just walked in and said, "You know what, I can do it better than you guys. I've had enough. You've had 30 years, you know,
And then,
it's just not good enough." And if the WPA are not prepared to change anything, then they're of no use to anybody in the professional game, the top tier of the game. Matchroom will do that. You know,
and I do want to extend out one of your points, Jim, with like they're not doing anything for the 10%. In fact, they're almost, you know, there's a situation where they're almost ignorantly blind to where they could have actually protected, right? Because if you look back at the U.S. Open, Barry Bierman, you know, he wasn't paying out players. I mean, he was literally holding back entry or prize money from players who would place whatever spot. I mean, he was not paying out some of the spots. And the WPA, I don't know, maybe you know the answer to this, Ed, but as far as I know, the WPA didn't do a damn thing about it. They still sanctioned his event every single year, knowing that he was having problems paying out this prize money year after year after year after year.
Yeah, the Barry Berman wasn't exactly the best manager of money, let's put it that way. He pretty much bent on the gate fees at the events, covering the costs that he put out of pocket ahead of time, and he would not recoup it. So to clarify on your comment, slight adjustment, it wasn't that he was holding back money, he didn't have it. So he did pay every player over time, and there were meetings and there were you know, threats by WPA or BCA at that time. I'm not exactly sure who it was. That I wasn't part of the BCA at that time, so I can't, you know, say 100%, but to my understanding and the best of my knowledge, that they were pressuring him not to sanction the event, so forth, until he came together with a business plan or some type of a plan to start paying the players back, which he did. Everyone, it just took forever to do.
Yeah, but it's a little unfair to single out.
You know,
it's a little unfair to single out one guy for that, because that's a common story from lots of promoters in the game over the years.
Yeah, but that was a WPA sanctioned event. I mean, if you're not,
I know, responsibility to make sure that, you know,
their responsibility is to safeguard against all of that stuff. Proof of funds, they're there to govern with infrastructure, guidelines, and standards, and they've been asleep at the wheel for years. They can't.
Exactly. The majority of the events that they've sanctioned deserve a refund.
Yeah,
to be honest, because they haven't done their job.
No.
Does
that not fall on the promoter, or does that fall on the governing body? Let me ask you that. Is that the promoter's
governing body therefore to ensure that everything is done correctly?
If they're going to put their stamp on it,
funds, you know,
if the WPA is going to put their stamp on it, then they have to be responsible to that stamp, right? And if they're going to put their
the same argument for the Matchroom stamp on the Sandcastle Open's first event, where they didn't guarantee that field got filled at all. I have the same argument for that. That stamp is supposed to ensure that the money's there. That stamp is supposed to ensure that the players are there. Yeah, we had it.
Yeah, but
the
Matchroom is
let me just finish that point. The second one, when I had a full field of 64 players, and I added more money out of pocket, and I answered to every little request from Emily and Matchroom all the time. And again, it's not against Matchroom. It's just that there are people that are putting in money, such as myself, and I try to be as modest as possible in saying this, that don't even get an email answered or any kind of correspondence because certain players want to cry about this or that to, you know, certain ones of the 10%, and they prevent that event from happening again. I don't ever want to have another Sandcastle Association with a Matchroom event until things are ironed out, to see that there is actually working with promoters or working with this organization or that organization rather than just putting a stamp on things.
Sure, but you started this entire conversation by saying, let's not get it twisted here. Matchroom is a promotion company, and WPA is a governing body, right? So don't hold Matchroom accountable to a governing body type of thing. Sure, they're creating a tour, and there's got to be some. Well, sure, but they got to have some sort of accountability when it comes to who they're allowing into their tour, but they're still not a governing body. Part of the WPA's responsibility, if they're going to give a stamp to one of their events, has to be the proper execution of the event. And we all know that Barry was a flawed man, but he did a ton for the game. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus and say like he's the devil of the industry. The guy did more for the game of pool probably than all but 5 or 6 people in U.S. history as far as promoters, right? And maybe he's done more than anybody else in U.S. history.
Possibly,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a real argument to be made. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but what I'm saying is you cannot, if the WPA is going to give their stamp year after year after year after year after year for the U.S. Open, and there's shenanigans that are happening like that, the WPA cannot just say, well, we don't know what's going on. We'll give you your stamp again next year, but sorry, good luck getting your money, Ralph, or Earl, or whoever's owing money.
Blindly taking the approval so you can line your own pockets and take the sanctioning fee is, let's call it for what it is.
Sanctioning fees are as big as they seem to be. 2.5% doesn't even amount to that much, getting hung up on it. And I understand that point. I just have the same argument too. But other than hang up on a sanctioning fee, there's other sanctioning fees to function for every industry. Everyone pays somebody. We all pay taxes. We all pay our landlords. We all pay the mortgage company. So, that argument that's the mentality of the pool player that can bet $500 a set but doesn't want to pay $2 for their coffee. That mentality's got to go. But to be more back on the point of enforcing and removing the stamp on certain events after a bad track record, absolutely, I agree, and that's something that are to be discussed. I'm sure that's going to be discussed in the General Assembly as well. Like, where are we failing as well? I've been in these meetings and we look at how we can do better each time, not what can we do to make money. At least from a nonprofit organization standpoint, that's what we look at. We look to stay afloat, have to cover costs because everything costs money, and there's a small budget set aside for covering expenses on things for people that I personally don't put my stipends in. When I go to BCA meetings and so forth, I say I put it towards something else, put it towards my membership, put it towards the next event, put it towards, travel fees for one of the players that can't make it, or one of the juniors come in or something, put it into the I forgot the name of the fund, but there's a scholarship fund for the DEF. I always donate $500 here, $500 there, like nothing. So it's not a bunch of money-hungry people that are there. There's a lot of volunteers that are putting their time in, and I'm putting in 40 hours a week now. So maybe 35 hours a week now, just being a player rep and contacting players and making calls. Just the other day, I made a call to the not the embassy, but the consulate in New York, trying to get somebody an expedited visa for them. That's all voluntary. That's taking time out of my day. I'm not looking for money for that. So if there are some people that do it full-time, truly full-time, in the pool world between 60 and 70 hours, 3 o'clock in the morning getting calls and so forth, and they need a little 2.5% to cover the travel expenses, not first class, but just, coach, absolutely, it's justified. Because no one works for free. No one. And there's 60, 80. I can use Shane Tyree as an example. The only one, I know Shane Tyree personally, I know Pat Fleming personally, and they both put in 70, 80 hours, let's say by the day, doing events. Shane probably puts in about 70, 80 hours a week or more. The BCA president, who's also WPA vice president now. I know during events, I've seen Pat Fleming put in 12, 16-hour days, as I have as well, during events. Do we take it and pay for it? No, we see what's left over if there's anything there. That's all. So there's a lot of things putting in. So this crying about 2.5% is just that. It really is. There's a lot of efforts being put in.
Well, it sounds more like it's the WPA that are crying about the 2.5%, because that's what they're on about. You have to sanction with us. You have to pay us. It seems to me,
I think above and beyond the sanction fee, Jim, not to cut you off, I apologize, but above and beyond sanctioning fees, it's more about a standard of organization where everybody has to abide by a rule set. We can't allow a monopoly to happen by one organization wanting to take over a point system. There was no problems between Matchroom and WPA for how many decades? Why?
Yeah, but they only had 3 events. They only had 3 events.
And promoters create events, right?
Yeah, they had 3 events, and now they've decided that now they wanted to create something. They wanted to create something bigger and better for the players. Yeah, they decided we're going to stick to 9-ball, and they offered the WPA a deal. Said all we want is the ranking. You recognize our ranking as the 9-ball world ranking. No, it doesn't need. You can have another ranking if you want. You can have a total ranking. You can have a 10-ball ranking. You can have as many rankings as you want. They didn't even have a 9-ball ranking. The last 9-ball ranking was back in the 80s. Their ranking was based on money won on everything. So it was the only 9-ball ranking anyway. The WPA refused it.
So don't you think that was the
That's all we asked for. Give us that and we'll sanction with you.
They want to own 9-ball.
No, you can't. No. You cannot own 9-ball. Nobody owns 9-ball. 9-ball is not for sale. You can't buy it. You can't own it.
If you're the only official 9-ball ranking points, what happens to the Just Northeast Tour Turning Stone points? They don't count for anything? What happens to the International 9-ball Open? Let's talk about the International 9-ball Open.
If you go to Matchroom, of course it does. You go to Matchroom and say, I want to be part of the World 9-ball Tour.
So now you don't see how that monopoly occurs. How a promoter, rather than free enterprise, you're now allowing a monopoly to occur by one person owning the points.
But there wasn't a 9-ball ranking anyway. But there wasn't a 9-ball ranking to begin with.
Well, not a 9-ball ranking.
I would say maybe one.
There was an all-round ranking. You can still have an all-round ranking. You just can't have a 9-ball ranking, which they didn't have anyway.
Correct.
So Ed, name any major sport in the world that isn't a monopoly. The NFL, the NBA, MLB, Premier League Soccer. I mean, they're all monopoly.
But they all have they're open enterprises. They're the best at it. Those are the ones that we see because they're at the forefront. And there's no problem with Matchroom being the best at it. It's just they don't own it. You answer to a governing body, or you check in with a governing body. It's about checks and balances. It's not a monopoly. Right. It's free enterprise. It's the best. That's why they're in the forefront. They don't monopolize.
But you said at the start, what are Matchroom doing for the sport? Not just for 9-ball, they should be done for the sport. If they're only taking 9-ball, they're not monopolizing the sport.
No, monopolizing 9-ball.
They're not monopolizing the sport, and you're talking about the growth of the sport. So 10-ball's still there, 14-1's still there, 8-ball's still there. Shouldn't the WPA be focusing on that? Why not just let Matchroom go and do the thing and say, okay, on you go. We've still got plenty of other stuff. They've got everything. They've got Hayball, they've got Carom, they've got all the rest of it. But if they start saying to players that are playing on the 9-ball tour, you can't play in these, then they kill those other disciplines as well on a professional level.
I've agreed with you on that point before. I don't think that
the
players should not be penalized from either side. Now, that same question was posed to Matchroom, and Carl was in the chat room, very active in the chat room over there. He couldn't answer that question. Why is that language in the Matchroom contract? A new contract.
And I wanted to point out this as well. There's a definite distinction between the WPA and the language used in the Matchroom contract. The language used in the Matchroom contract is specifically for 9-ball and only 9-ball. Now, if everybody turns around and says we want to be affiliated with the World 9-ball tour, then there isn't any other 9-ball tour. If there is another one, then okay, Matchroom have never said that they've got it in the contract, but they've never gone through. They've never pushed through with it. They've said it's always been there. It's always been in the contracts. Now, the WPA. Let me finish. The WPA are doing a blanket on everything. They're banning pool players because of something that happens in snooker. Something happens in snooker, they ban pool players from going to a tournament in that country. That's ridiculous. All Matchroom is doing is trying to protect their product of 9-ball. The WPA are just throwing snooker players did something wrong, so pool players are going to pay for it. That's ridiculous. Surely that's you. How can you? Anyone possible? I think that's just.
I'm torn on that as well. However, WPA is responsible for all cue sports once again. So if a penalty is applied to one, it has to be applied across the board to the player. Not to to those involved or the parties involved, not to just one portion of it.
Okay, but then the rules are stupid.
Yes, I agree. Rules are stupid. The rules need to be revised. When was the last time the rules were revised?
Exactly. The whole thing needs an overhaul, but they keep saying this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we've always done it. Yeah. There's so many things that are wrong with the way you've always done it. And if you can't see that, hopefully they do start to see it because it's become more and more public now and more and more people are talking about it. They can't continue to work like this.
I'm starting to hear echo chamber comments over here as far as just because that's the way it's been doesn't mean that's blasted all over and we're just repeating things that we see online. However, I agree with that. And that's why there's an absolutely new board that is on the WPA. And no offense, I don't want to personally attack Ian Anderson, but he was there forever. And he's now moved on to whatever position he is. I don't know. He's not really involved in the forefront. I see that he's listed as a CEO. That's fine. However, Ishwan is now just stepping in to clean up a mess. Has there been problems for 20 years? Absolutely. No one's arguing that. Has it been run effectively? I don't believe, in the public eye for event coordination? No. Are the people that are there now going to be changing things and making things for the better? Absolutely. I mean, for an example, here within the BCA alone, on the industry side, it actually makes money for the industry, where we have manufacturers and retailers that make millions of dollars. There was a tear in the industry recently, a few years ago, this was before COVID and during COVID, where the BCA Expo wasn't what it was. And the industry was torn between different shows. And the BCA, for the last 3 years, have been working nonstop, maybe even 4 years, nonstop to reunite the industry. Again, don't brag about it. It's not public information. But now at our next coming up BCA Expo, we're bringing all the people back into the fold at the same show, exhibiting together, getting each other discounts and so forth, reuniting things. And that's what one example of an organized or an organization does in the federation alone, above and beyond just the play side of things. Now, do I see the same thing and the same efforts happening for WPA and Matchroom? Absolutely. I see things changing. I see things that are going to be altered. Maybe rules are altered. Maybe contracts are altered moving forward. I mean, we can sit here and hash about what was and what was and what was. It doesn't do anything. What actions are being taken to do things? Discussing and hashing out, players are going to be banned, making the assumption that players are going to be banned, I don't believe is just. I don't believe
You
that.
don't think that'll happen?
I still don't think that's going to happen. I hope it doesn't for 100%. Do I think so? I think there's only a 30% chance.
A 30% chance, even though he's kind of made the statement that is the direction they're going.
I think he's flexing.
I think he made a mistake. He was caught off guard. He wasn't prepared.
But he meant it at the time.
I mean, all they need to do is just do a little bit of their homework and look back only a few years in history to when Matchroom were involved in some of this before, and they'll realize that they're breaking the law by doing it. They're breaking several laws by doing it. And
I'm not that version. They will not lose. What you're referring to?
Sorry?
What contract? I'm not sure what law or contracts were happening.
This happened in darts. It went to court, and they lost. And the BDO lost the case in court because they were not allowed to ban. It was employment laws. They broke employment laws, and they weren't allowed to. And it'd be the same. The WPA, they'd be stupid to do it.
Yeah, all pro players are self-employed, right? You got to be able to make your choice for yourself. Right.
Chris, you better hope. Chris, you better hope that they ban all those players. You just became one of the world's elite players.
I need them to ban. I need them to ban about.
He was already elite after he beat me.
I know Ed's saying that there's going to be new people going onto the board, fresh blood, new ideas, but the horse is already bolted. The horse is already bolted. The WPA left this vacuum in place, and Matchroom have stepped into it. There is no pulling that back now. The genie's out of the bottle. You can't pull it back. The best decisions the WPA can make now are to appease the players and ensure that they can play in other events, not to ban them from other things. That's not going to serve them well. If people are put gun to their head, they're going to make one choice and one choice only, and it's not to stick with other WPA events. It's Matchroom and Matchroom only, and some of the players have said that publicly already.
Out of curiosity, Ed, how many WPA sanctioned events actually are there that aren't invite only that aren't exclusive to certain countries? The China Open.
No, there's actually preliminary rounds that are open. You just have to qualify in. It's a completely different structure.
Sure.
Similar to what I was trying to do with the NBL here in the USA. You have to have a qualifying round open to anyone and everyone, and if they qualify to the top percentage, then they get in. Let's say the top 16 out of those qualifiers get in, or the top 24 get in. The invites are just for people that are like veterans that are grandfathered in or already proven themselves or already earned points enough in each federation, each federal organization. So let's say within the BCA, that's one of my jobs now as player representative, to go down the list and reach out to each and every player out of the top 16 or top 25, see if they're available, if they'd like to go to certain events, and assign those allocations to those players and help them along the way to get to those international events.
So it becomes a case then for some players, if they have nothing better to do, if they have no better offers on the table, then some of those events start to look attractive. It's kind of
Depends on financing also. You also get seeded into a second stage event by earning those points. You're now bypassing that preliminary round. You're starting into a second stage where you're guaranteed money just by showing up. And that's is one of the part of the things that WPA is trying to protect here is that system that's been in place to offer these allocations out there. And the entire world is cooperating with it. Matchroom was cooperating with it as well. Now we want to do our own thing. And I completely understand what was missing. I completely understand Matchroom's intentions of trying to make something better and something more beautiful and pizzazz and and the glamour and get the household name and get pool players to become household names. That's still not going to happen for 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
But at least you're on the path then, right? At least you're heading in the right direction. They've done this 2 or 3 times already. They know what to do to make it happen.
So did the IPT. And so did several other people, 3 other people.
Not anywhere close to the level that Matchroom did.
Yeah. It's too young to tell. And I wish them the best. Again, I don't see this as a WPA versus Matchroom. Both have roles, both have a need, both need to be a check and balance, and one has to put time. One puts time into organizing and creating events and opportunities, and the other one checks to make sure that it is in line with the rest of the entire world. Allowing free enterprise for another Matchroom to come along and have it, maybe Predator or maybe whomever else, or independent people. Again, we talk about Barry Berman. He was one man, not a multi-million-dollar company or a multi-sport company. He worked out of passion for the game.
But it was the WPA's responsibility to cultivate strong relationships with good promoters, and they've had a lot of time to do it. Matchroom are there now, and it just turns out that there's too much inertia behind the force that's going on. It's too big to be held back.
And now it's Ishwan's job, not Ian's. Now it's Ishwan's job to sit down at a round table with Emily and Barry Heard and discuss how to make the best opportunities available for players to have options rather than choosing.
And what fighting over them. So let's say you're in this meeting. Let's say you're in this meeting, Ed. What do you see as the common ground? What do you see as the point where these guys can come together and actually work together on this?
Now, I feel that Matchroom events points should be taken into consideration. Absolutely. And if they create more 9-ball points with more money, the players are going to play in them. Great. They're also WPA sanctioned at the same time. So now they're getting world ranking points, true all-around world ranking points for 8-ball, 9-ball, 10-ball, hay-ball, whatever they play in. They're earning points. How do points work? Participation. Right now, it's not feasible for any player to participate on a full-time basis to become a professional pool player and have a good life, right? But that's the end goal, what we want to see. So we shouldn't exclude anything. So the points are recognized in the overall global point system, but it cannot be its own point system because then that disrupts every other continental federation systems out there in place already. Now that is just because it's the way it's been done. We're just adding to it to make it better together. Now, Matchroom, I don't care if I see Matchroom becoming the official promoter and marketing company for the entire sports industry. But will they do that? Start with 9-ball, then go to 10-ball, then go to.
They only care about 9-ball.
Because they're there for what? Why? Because the bottom line is different than the bottom line of a governing body. The bottom line is if it makes us money and we see potential and we can get revenue streams from advertisers, then we'll work with it.
I don't see why this is. I don't see why that's such a boogeyman, though. I don't see why it's
if they're making money, the players are making money.
I just don't fundamentally understand this argument.
10%. 10%
yes,
of players.
But that's the players that have been left behind.
Have they been left behind?
Yes, they have. Come on, come on. You've just said yourself there's not enough going on for players to make a living and to travel. That's because of what's happened in history. That's not because of Matchroom. Matchroom are now providing them with the possibility to actually earn money, and the prize money will grow and grow and grow. The World Championship is paid twice as much now than it was 4 years ago.
And Matchroom has done a great job creating those events.
It's only going to get more. It's only going to get
more.
That's
why it should be a part of it. And that's exactly why it should be a part of the whole global system, offering opportunities for all players.
But the opportunity for all the players. What players don't have the opportunity?
So the ones that can't afford to, the ones that aren't financed by major companies that are backing them and sponsoring them. We don't even have true sponsorship for players. We have product sponsors for people that are. We have American players hustling shoes online, So
It's
they're
not
not sponsored to
Matchroom.
get there. So there's only a handful of people that can afford to fly around the world to gain those points. So it's the same problem, just in under a different label. It's the same poor structure and poor business model under another structure, another label rather. Again,
Okay, so
you ask me if I'm at the meeting and we're having a solution. Matchroom's points are accepted as part of the whole global system for all players to be equally accessible to. How do we do that? We have to have the same number of events in each nation, right? Spread out the events so now it's feasible for those that can't afford to travel that are not sponsored to get to events in each nation. Then we have national champions, and we have a world championship. Our world championships are just sign up, pay your money, go and play. Is that a true champion? Or is that just who can afford to go play, who is sponsored to play?
Well, it's not really, because the top 128 players get put into it.
I'm struggling to.
The top 128 players have their spots guaranteed. So it's not just anybody signs up. The top 128 are guaranteed a spot in the World Championships.
But they earned that. They earned that through participation.
Exactly. So it's not just anybody signs up. It's the best 128 players plus qualifiers and other people.
Plus open entries. Most of them are open events, right?
I think the idea is it's going to be qualifiers.
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting to this giant point where this big clash between these two, because Matchroom is completely. I mean, at this point in time, Matchroom is completely surpassing and just moving away from where this industry is at. The reason that Matchroom has all this bargaining power and can just basically tell Predator, we're not interested in working with you anymore if you don't want to play our game. And now they can go to the WPA and say, well, if you're not going to play by our rules, we don't want to deal with you either. It's because they're bigger than this entire industry at this point. We haven't had an organizer this big in probably 30, 40 years, maybe ever. Yeah. And I mean, it comes down simply to the statement, those who have the gold make the rules. And if the WPA is scraping by their bootstraps, trying to exist within a pool world 2.5% at a time, and Matchroom is potentially bringing in millions of dollars at these events, and they're growing the prize pools, and they're adding new events to the calendar, and they're constantly growing. WPA is like trying to hold on to any grip that they can possibly have at controlling this industry, and Matchroom just seems to be saying, well, boo, we'll just go on our own and have fun with the Predator events, have fun with the Japan Open, have fun with the China Open. We're just going to do our own thing, and we don't have to exist within you. And like, I this entire thing to me is just stupid, because in 3 years from now, if assuming the Matchroom continues going the way that they are, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if the prize fund for the U.S. Open is $1 million to $1.5 million, and that's across the board for most of their events, where all of their events are giving away $750,000 to $1 million. And the WPA is just sitting around still making their 2.5% on $100,000 purses. I just don't even understand why this is even as big of a deal as it is. WPA isn't growing. They haven't grown in 30 years. We do have somebody that's growing. Why is WPA trying to control the growth that's coming from a company that's independent from them? It just seems silly to me.
What do you mean by growing, Nate? What do you define by growing? I mean, there's more support and more things happening on local levels that the WPA is overseeing. I can't sit here and listen. It'll take like 25 minutes just to do that alone.
Okay, but talk about the professional game, the elite, the professional game.
Again, that's only 10%.
But
10%.
That's all they're interested in.
Matchroom have openly said we are going to grow the professional game of pool.
That's all it is.
Game of pool, not the professional
and
game
the juniors and the juniors.
Professional game of 9-ball. Okay,
and the juniors.
9-ball. Why
Please
can't
include the juniors?
I mean, boxing's got 4 governing bodies, and it's the same sport they all govern. It's the same size of ring. It's the same gloves they use.
Look how bad boxing is now as compared to what it used to be.
But for years and years and years.
For example, Jim, for example.
They all had their own thing. They all had their own thing.
We're all on the same page, is that we want to see the best for the players. Absolutely. That's not a question. That's what it comes down to. But the players, today, tomorrow, and the future. The answer is, how do they come together? I don't think that it has to be one or the other. I think it's how do they work together in coexistence as they have before, accepting more events, but also not scheduling on top of other ones to make players choose.
I don't see how they ever coexist.
I do. Like I said, you schedule 3 tiers on a calendar. How many? I put in a post somewhere. I think it was on Windows Open. We don't even have 40 major events a year. We have 52 weeks a year. You have 12 weeks of rest and travel in between, and you have let's say we do. It would be wonderful if we have 40 great events a year. Okay, we can't figure out a way to schedule tier one events apart from one another, allowing more opportunities for different level players. We can't figure out a way to schedule, with all these great minds that we have in the industry, we can't just sit down and figure out a solution of scheduling 12 months, 40, now we don't even have 40 events. Let's say it's 25, 30 events a year out of 52 weeks. We can't spare 22 weeks in between somewhere or the other, can't push or give. That's all it comes down to is really scheduling and allowing the opportunities. I'd rather look for solutions of working together rather than arguing of who's done more, who can do more, who's bringing what to the table, and work together to bring all benefits to the table.
Okay, I want to throw this at you. I would much rather see the calendar grow to 60 events all under one person than trying to take 60 events from 17 different promoters and lining them up. Why can't we just go back one organization that's doing the legwork as to adding to this calendar, as opposed to working with a bunch of individual promoters that all have been doing good work for the last 20 years to keep the game alive and and at least treading water. But why can't we all just coalesce behind one organizer that's actually doing something to grow the sport, as opposed to maximizing the opportunities for 30 events? I'd rather
all the professional players are going to do that.
Why? Okay, there's a small percentage of the top percent may do that, but the other 90% that can't afford to travel, that are not sponsored, they get nothing now. So let's say goodbye to international level.
Well, Matchroom has been.
Let's say goodbye to Desert City. Let's say goodbye to all these other events.
But come on, Ed. Tell me that you tell me right now the Matchroom is not seemingly doing exactly what they need to do to build a worldwide tour. They have one event in the U.S. They have two events in three if you want to count the World 9-Ball or the World Pool Championships. They have three in Europe. They're adding an event in Asia, and they're trying to get a bunch of smaller places. Like there's the Vietnam Open. They're working on building the 9-Ball tour in the U.S. and they're even looking. I mean, Carl, you can talk to this more. Last I heard, they were trying to add at least one, maybe two events to the U.S. They seem to be doing what they need to do to extend out into more areas. So it becomes a little bit easier for those, let's say, the shortstop style of pros between 750 to 770 that can't afford to go all the way across the world, that they still get an event or two a year to be able to showcase their skills and try to build up maybe a little bit of a war chest to be able to go to other events. They do seem to be spreading their tour across the world.
And as I said before, that is yet to be seen. That sounds like one thing. Does it come to fruition? I hope it does, for more opportunities. But we can't just negate all the other things that are going on right now and saying, okay, let's all just follow the new shiny object. And if it falls apart, it falls apart. Oh, now we come crawling back. This has happened several times before in the past. I hope it doesn't.
Matchroom have got a track record in other sports of succeeding.
Other sports.
Very similar sports. Darts and snooker, very, very similar. Very similar in their history.
Okay, yeah, darts is easy. Anyone can do it. Anyone can throw a dart. They get involved. Right? Not to the highest level, but you know what I'm saying.
So let's say next year Matchroom falls apart. Matchroom falls apart. Their entire tour goes bye-bye. Where are we any different then than we were 10 years ago when the WPA was running everything?
They're never going to fall apart to that point. It's just a World 9-Ball tour may or may not be. We don't know. And the organization they made may or may not be. We don't know. It comes down to business models, and will it be a sustainable business model to have players continue chasing carrots, as you stated before, and dangling these prize purses that they have to still come in fifth place or better to go for. Unless we expand the field to 500 players or 1,000 players, do we have enough entry fee money or added money? Because no one's going to be putting $300,000 into events unless it's China with the Bank of China, for backing them as Joy Products do. They have the support of their government. They have the support of the bank. The Bank of Qinghangdao supports the Chinese Hayball events. So they have endless support, and they're on national television. They're on CCTV5. We don't have that structure, and we don't have 20 years to develop that structure either. So we can't get rid of anything that we have. We, as an industry, cannot afford to lose the WPA and make it go away, or the federations in our internet. It's not going to go away. We can't afford. Okay, if we come to that point, great. But who's going to check and balance everything to keep free enterprise available? We can't just shut it down and allow a monopoly to happen, and then everything else goes away. Then there's no industry, and then there's no other organizers. There's no other events. The people that can't afford to. Now we lose all that bottom feeding structure to get to that 10% because everything
So
else went away now.
if the WPA did not exist, but a successful players union did, would we need the WPA at all? If we had a successful players union that worked, would the WPA be needed at
Successful is the
all?
key word there. I want to take a second to give hats off and kudos to Darren and JJ and everybody. Jeremy is trying to put another players union together. I wish him the best of luck. I think Charlie Williams tried to do one before, it didn't work. Johnny Archer, not
Johnny did.
everyone's favorite anymore. He tried to put one together, right? And what happened to them? Players hate on each other every day. Let's call a spade a spade. Players don't work together all on their own. There's all cliques and everything, and everyone has a difference of opinion. But I wish the best of luck. There needs to be a players union. Johnny Demet. He's been working on putting something together for years. Has anyone heard of it? Know of it? No, I'm familiar with it. And he has a great idea and a great thing. I don't know if he's part of the team. Maybe Darren can answer that question in the chat, or Carl. Don't dodge the question, Carl. I'm right here. Come on, pal. Is Johnny Demet on the team as far as putting in some input on the committee as far as players committee or players union?
Okay, so as far as answer my question.
Yeah.
Is the WPA needed at all if there is a successful players union?
Yes, absolutely. Because players
For
can
what?
only see things from a player's standpoint. I apologize if you don't like hearing that, but that's a fact. You can't have
Sure.
just players. You
No,
can't
you're
have
right.
just one aspect of it. You have to have industry leaders. And then there has to be money put in. There has to be organization put in, and the manufacturers and retailers that work with the federations and give to the federations on a regular basis for all these last 50 years 45 years I can speak on, are not going to work with some new person coming along, not knowing if they're going to be sustainable or not. WPA has proven sustainability. Whether it's a perfect system or not, the management has changed. Okay, so whether it's a
Sustainability is a
perfect
weird
system, no. But how is it
Survive.
weird? It's alive. It survived. Yeah,
Proven
it
surviving.
survived. And that's what sustainability means. It's alive. It's still here. But obviously, there's no argument that things aren't perfect, that things need to change. But companies have to work together. Organizations have to work together. And one entity doing everything, putting all your eggs in one basket, is never a smart idea.
How do you work together? How do the federations work together with the WPA when the WPA don't seem to even acknowledge that what they've been doing is wrong? They don't even see it. They're ignorant to the fact. They think that what they're doing is perfect. It's great. Look what we're doing. We're producing.
I don't agree with that. I don't. We have these arguments internally as well. As far as on the BCA side, how to handle the situation of that. One person making one statement doesn't speak on behalf of everyone that constitutes.
No, but I'm not talking about what Sean said. I'm talking about doing the same thing for 30 years and not realizing that it's not working.
Define that further. Again, that's an echo chamber response, with all due respect, Tim. But what has been not working? Let's study that. We haven't had, again.
The fact. Well, you know, one thing that doesn't work for me is that players are having to park six guys into a Prius to travel between tournaments and live and stay in Airbnbs, while the top guys at the WPA are flying all business class to go to a meeting in the desert that could be done over Zoom, staying in a top hotel. That's disrespectful. It's completely insane that they can't see that this is just stupid. This is what's wrong. They don't understand. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't have a clue how they're representing. They don't have a clue how they're perceived.
I can speak on the BCA level. There's Zoom meetings a few times a month. Like I said, I was running around earlier, putting things together, it's not preparing for another meeting that's happening next week. But there's Zoom meetings all the time. However, once a year at least, an organization has to get together face to face, sit down at the table, and hash things out. Business, that's just business 101. You get a lot more accomplished. I don't agree with.
They have to discuss bans.
Yeah.
In a hotel in the. I mean, come on.
No. That wasn't the point of having the General Assembly in Qatar. They were having General Assembly of everything, the General Assembly of all things. That's just one little point. One point of a multitude of many.
They're there to serve the players and the game, and they don't seem, in my opinion, they don't seem to care about the professional players. It's a conveyor belt for them, but once you're at the end of the conveyor belt, you can just fall off the end. It doesn't matter.
So regulating opportunities and avoiding monopoly does not serve the players, in your opinion.
For professional players, it's better there being a monopoly than not a monopoly.
How does it serve the players? Why do we have no millionaires in our sport? Why are world champions selling cue balls on Facebook?
I agree with you. I agree. I can't stand seeing players getting online selling cue balls and hustling cues for fun. That's a lack of support. Bottom line, regardless of who's in charge, that's a lack of support from
It's a
viewership.
lack of money in the industry.
Lack of money in the industry. Why did golf get big? Philanthropists put money into the game. I have to speak the truth and call a spade a spade. The pool industry is let's say 80% of the billiards industry constituency is of people that are takers, not givers. I'm seriously contemplating right now putting together a nonprofit organization called what was I going to call it? Let's Pledge. And LETS is an acronym. Let's Pledge, where the acronym stands for lodging. What was the E for? Anyway, travel and support. Or entry fee. Yeah. So lodging, entry fee, travel, support, pledge. I want to know how many people watching right now will pledge $20 a month on a regular basis. $20 is a nominal fee. But if we have how many pool players or pool enthusiasts in the country, in the U.S. alone, I can tell you the stats, 34.7 million pool enthusiasts that are registered, either league players or avid pool room players and tournaments and Fargo and so forth, all combined. Out of that, nearly 35 million people, how many will pledge $20 a month?
Ed,
we get
Ed,
1,000 of them?
with all due respect,
Doing something.
I know, but with all due respect, you're looking at this industry.
It's not their responsibility to support the game.
Hold on, Jim. You're looking at this. You're looking at this industry as like
money goes to the NFL.
But it's not your responsibility to do it. You do
Jim,
it because you want the
T-shirt.
T-shirt.
Hold on. Jim, Ed, with all due respect, you're looking at this industry from needing a charity case. Where I'm looking at this is let's let Matchroom do their thing, improve the game, improve the prize funds, just get out of their way. Let them do what they've already been doing for the last 10 years.
No, I agree with it.
And then revisit this in 5 years, and let's see what happens to the actual professional game. Let's see what the prize funds look like. Let's see what the World 9-Ball Tour looks like. And then instead of like getting this nice charitable thing where we're giving these players an ability to exist and pay for their transfer, maybe there's enough. Maybe you're not breaking even at 5th, 6th anymore. Maybe now you're breaking even at like 24 through 32nd, and we don't have to worry about these things. And we could just let the players be players at that point in time, and then let natural selection take its course. If you suck at pool too much to where you can't make money, go get a job. And maybe if you're good enough at it and you can hang around for a little while, maybe you can have one really good tournament finish, and then that could fund your next year. You can actually have a real opportunity at making some money. I just don't see why we have to look at this industry as like needing a charity case. Why can't we just look at it as let's let capitalism work out? Let's see what Matchroom can do with this. It's the best chance that we have. Let's stop trying to hold them back and make them exist within some box that doesn't work to begin with. And maybe at the end of 5 to 10 years, we'll look back and say, all right, Matchroom hasn't done anything. Matchroom isn't going anywhere. Now let's try to actually do some of the things that we were trying to do 5 years ago. And let's see if we can actually get this train back on the tracks. But right now, why are we trying to hinder the only company that's actually doing things?
I think Ed agrees with that.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I don't believe that bans are the way to go. I don't believe that hindering anything is the way to go. I believe that working together is. I'm looking to find a solution. I'm not alone in this. As a representative of the BCA, I'm not alone in that standpoint. In that point that you're making there. There has to be a resolution. No one has to go away. No one has to stop doing what they're doing. I 100% agree with having more dates on the calendar, having a free enterprise is my point of many people. But if we allow everything to be controlled as far as the point system being declared the official point system for 9-ball, now that knocks out 20 other promoters for things.
But that's only for the World 9-Ball Tour.
Allow me to finish, please. With all due respect. I lose my thoughts too quickly. So there's so many things up there, and they're all over the place. But if we allow, this is coming from foresight and from experience as well and seeing other things in business. You can't allow anything to be monopolized to a degree where no one else is allowed to do it by granting those points. Let Matchroom do the things. Let players play in the Matchroom events. Let Matchroom players play in other 9-ball events, as stated in their documentation. Which, let me make a point real quick. The U.S. Open is a BCA ranking points event, which trickles up to the WPA. The International Open 9-ball event is a BCA ranking points event and a Matchroom ranking points event. That's the path that should be taken. Both points are applied.
Is your BCA ranking solely 9-ball?
No.
Well, this is what I mean. Matchroom are the only entity that are going to have a ranking for one discipline. Everybody else's ranking is either monetary based on all of the different disciplines, or points based on all of the different disciplines. Matchroom are the only one that have said we want to have a ranking that is specifically only 9-ball. Now, if they are the only one that has that type of ranking, then it has no effect on anybody else's ranking.
I don't think that's correct, though. Is it Predator have their own ranking for their own events? 10-ball?
Predator has a ranking. Events,
okay, Predator has a 10-ball ranking, so that's okay for Predator?
Let everybody do it. Great.
Right. Let everyone do it. However, no one has declared the official ranking points. It has to be a conglomeration of all for free enterprise. You understand what I'm saying?
Why does it?
Why?
Yeah, I don't.
If nobody else is doing it, why does it matter?
Because the one pocket player that plays one 9-ball event or a couple 9-ball events in here doesn't have the feasible means to participate.
Then play more 9-ball.
Sorry.
Now we have to force the one pocket player to become a 9-ball player. Just because that's the only place.
If they want to play in a 9-ball event, then sure, yeah. I mean, if I'm a professional golfer and I want to go jump in the pool and race against Michael Phelps, my golf shouldn't have anything to do with what I'm going to do in a swimming pool. Same way with snooker and English 8-ball, right? I mean that's more of a. If you're going to be a specialized player and you're going to complain that your specialization isn't going to give you a benefit in some other, just because you play good one pocket doesn't mean that you should get a spot in the World Snooker Tour. I mean, it's silly to make that argument.
We have some clarification in the room. Fair dropped their points list, so it's the WPA rankings that they're going by now.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but you see what we're doing here? We're opening up the conversation. We're now trying to think of resolutions of why, what could be and what could not be. And this open conversation would not occur if one company takes over all point systems or a point system.
It's just a point system.
Now, let's say onepocket.org. Well, we're the official governing body of One Pocket. Speaking of One Pocket, haven't seen anything, heard anything, or done anything with onepocket.org in I don't know how many years since Grady Matthew died. God bless him. What are they doing? Let's bring them on. Now, are they a promoter? No, they're just an organization, governing body of One Pocket, or I don't even know if they're established as a 501c3 or not. But a nonprofit organization governing equally across the board is absolutely necessary for checks and balances, so that way the system does not get disrupted by one monopoly or monopolizer. Okay.
I don't disagree with that. I don't necessarily disagree with that. What I have a problem with is why are we doing it now? What is so special about now?
To be honest with you, my personal belief why now is because Matchroom overstepped their boundaries as a promoter and tried to become a governing body with rules and point systems, and that's where it started. And then scheduling would come into play because they started scheduling events on top of other major events across the world. Scheduling, people say, oh yeah, but it's impossible to avoid everything. True. Like I said, the 52 weeks in the year, do we have 52 events?
Matchroom do.
52 events?
They have 52 events. They have 52 events that are with the World 9-Ball Tour.
They are pretty damn close to 52
yes.
if they're not there.
That's impressive, and that's great. I would ask
how do they then stop conflict with other people's events without putting their own events in conflict then?
What I suggested before, 3 tiers based on opportunity and feasibility for players. It is about the players. It's about all players and feasibility for them to travel to them, whether sponsored or not.
When has a Matchroom Tier 1 event clashed with somebody else's Tier 1 event?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but before, it wasn't long ago, a few months ago, I can't remember the name of the event right now.
You're talking about the European Championships?
The UK Open.
I just counted up.
Yeah, that's one of them right there. Yeah.
The World 9-Ball Tour has 44 events on the calendar. Not all of those are open to all players. Obviously, the Mosconi Cup is not open to all players. And then this has all of the junior events on there too. So there's probably about 35 events that are on here.
Okay,
just to clarify, they do not have 52.
Okay, so they not announced number 50 just a couple of months ago.
Then they haven't updated their website, or those are for next year.
Or they've dropped a couple like that Sharks thing that didn't come up to
Well,
standard.
they could be at 50 for next year.
Again,
Too. But I'm counting how many are this year available this year right now. There are 44 events. Some of them are junior events, and some of them are the World 9 Ball, the Premier League Pool, the Mosconi Cup that not everybody can play in. But I mean, we know that they're adding events every year. I mean, what is it? The last year the European Open was added. This year the Asian Open was added, and the Spanish Open was added. I mean,
keep adding them, just don't overlap. That's it.
Sure.
Keep adding them, just don't overlap. And don't try to be a governing body when you're a promoter. Be the best promoter. Perfect. Be the best promoter. Don't try to be a governing body. And the governing body don't limit players' potential for income.
What would be wrong with them? What would be wrong with them becoming a governing body?
They're a for-profit organization, and they're looking for dollars. What benefits them?
They create.
They will not put into anything if it doesn't make the money. You can't. That's not right. Non-profit organization is about the actual industry. Private organizations can never be a governing body.
And for the professional game, the greatest commercial opportunities are going to come through Matchroom doing their rinse and repeat sports and creating opportunities.
Today, let's say one of my pool room customers works for Merck Pharmaceuticals, and he loves pool. And he retires tomorrow with great benefits and packages, and now he wants to put all his time and effort in pool. And Merck now wants to take over and be the governing body or the number one promoter. We're going to stop that because we already gave those rights to Matchroom, and Matchroom can't match Merck money.
There'd be nothing stopping somebody else from starting up. As things stand right now, there's nothing stopping.
Keep it open enterprise.
It's open
free
right
enterprise
now.
for anyone.
It's open. Attract the players.
Right now it is by a governing body that makes sure that equal opportunities exist.
No, you're wrong on that. Absolutely, you're wrong. Because there's nothing stopping. If Predator had an influx of, let's just say $1 billion that goes into Predator tomorrow, you can't tell me that their tour isn't going to add 50 events and they're going to completely stomp out Matchroom.
Yeah,
you can't say that. I mean, you know just well as I do that if that were to happen, or if some other organization come up, I'm just using Predator because they already exist and they're kind of getting passed up by Matchroom. If $1 billion went into that tour tomorrow, you cannot tell me that Matchroom would have a chance to keep up with that. And they could overlap every single one of the Matchroom events. They could overlap the U.S. Open. They could overlap the World Pool Championship.
Again, it's not about one company over the other and overlapping. Where are we forgetting the players again now? It's about opportunities for players equally, not making that choice.
But the players are going to go to whatever gives them the most money.
If they can afford to get there. If the
prize fund was $1 million, they'd be able to afford it because now they can get 17th or 24th to break even, if not further back.
I'd like to see it happen. No, I agree with you, and I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see it happen. That's why I'm against limiting players' income potential or trying to fight one another rather than working with each other. Now, that my standpoint from start to finish has been, it's not about WPA versus Matchroom. It's about working together.
And to be fair, we are using you kind of as a punching bag for like the WPA.
I did see.
I know it. And I was given 1 hour prep. I'm not even actually 15 minutes prep for this. Hey, you want to come on today? Sure. I'll take the heat. Not a problem.
I did say at the beginning I was going to use you as my Matchroom, but not to take any.
That's fine. I don't take offense. We're all here because we all love the game. And if we love the game, we have to protect the integrity of the game and make it beneficial for all players, not just a handful of players. I could sit here and spit dirt about how dirty Matchroom moves or emails I've seen. I don't want to say Matchroom in particular, but I've seen not thousands, let's say hundreds of threatening emails behind the scenes from one organization to another, and none of them have been in the benefit of the player. Okay, so I can sit here, but I'm not. It's unprofessional. Facebook is not the place to do it. Public forum is not the place to do it. Sitting down at a round table, hashing things out. I can tell you about my bad experiences with Matchroom. I can tell you about bad experiences with WPA events, or what I've seen missing, or how poorly, or how I was embarrassed to be involved in an event here or there. What was missing or what needed to be done. But that's how we progress forward. We learn from one another and we grow together, for the integrity of the sport and making it better along the way. But just shutting everything down to follow one shiny new object and cutting everyone out by granting them all rights, absolutely foolish.
So, Ed, let me ask. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Let Chris.
So, from a strategic perspective, then, what can the WPA do to get back on side with Matchroom? That's really the question. What can be
Great
done at this
question.
point in time?
That's a great question, and that's for them. I'm unfortunately, maybe those listening in or someone that's on WPA that might be watching in silence now can allow a few more seats to
we know we saw
representation
Shane
from
Tyree here.
Federation. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. Maybe there's more opinions need to be heard and ideas of solutions need to be heard rather than flexing what we have in place to hurt the players. You know, I mean, I'm not the only one that's thinking. You know, I think you should have Shane on. He's well spoken, but he is so busy. I don't know if he has the time right now. It's a very busy time, and with all this going on, it's ridiculous to add to more fuel to the fire rather than finding a resolution. I'd rather see a couple podcasts where 5 points are addressed of how to resolve this, how to resolve that, this point and that point. Okay, not talking about the past because we can't control what happened in the past. We can't change what happened in the past. We have different people in charge now. You know, what are the roles? What are the defined roles of the governing body? What are the defined roles of a promoter? And what lines are not to be crossed? What is in the best interest of the integrity of the game for players today and to come tomorrow?
And a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
What now the horse has bolted? What is the incentive for Matchroom to come back to the table and talk with the WPA?
Cooperation from other federations around the world where they do have government support, and the government support will not go along with a single enterprise entity.
How does that support Matchroom's business model?
Well, players, they won't have some European players, I'm sure.
I think we're all accepting of the fact that I think we're all accepting of the fact that if a gun is put to a player's head, they're going to go with Matchroom now and not with any WPA backed.
I don't know when it comes down to it.
Okay, but what Matchroom is offering, I mean, we're looking at the way it is now. What Matchroom are offering, and this is, again, it happened with the darts, and the darts players had to go through a few dark years where they weren't earning money, they were struggling, but they believed in what Matchroom was selling them, and it grew and grew and grew, and they became millionaires. But they had to wait a little bit of time for it. You know,
right? So what do we do? And how
we're kind
I'm not
of
familiar with that.
I can go through the whole thing if you want. It only takes 5 minutes. We're in that situation now, and you're talking about if it happens. What Matchroom is promising the players is we're going to provide a system for you. We're going to provide the tournaments for you where you do not need government funding because you will be a professional player. Professional players don't get government funding. Okay, you're a professional athlete. We're going to make you a professional athlete. You don't need to have government funding. The government funding through the WPA and the structure there, I agree. Great for bringing through more people who then jump onto the big stage and become professionals, and they cut the umbilical cord, if you like. That's what Matchroom is offering, and that is in a professional sport. That's why they keep using the word amateur. I don't like using the word amateur because it's not. I don't like using that. But they need to
professionals.
Yeah, they need to define what, and that's what you do.
We don't even know what a professional is here.
You make a conscious decision to dedicate your life to being a professional at that, and it becomes your work. And that's what Matchroom are doing. You are going to work. You're not just going to be pool players. You're going to be professionals. Now, the government funding is not something that should be given to professional pool players, in my opinion. Professional pool players should not be taken out of the government funding either. That should be for amateur players who are growing through to give them the opportunity to go and establish themselves to become professional pool players. That's what Matchroom are offering. That's what they did with the darts as well. So the government funding
can fill in that gap. I think Matchroom can fill in that gap after those players progress, but cannot be the only option. You know, we can't just set a precedent now today saying that's the only option. They have the rights for the points, and they are now the official body or the official organization for a certain portion of a discipline for 10% of our players.
But it's not the only option. It's just the best option.
Great. Until something else comes along.
It's not the only option. You can go play 10 ball if you want. Go play 10 ball. Go play one pocket. Go play whatever you want. Or you can choose to play 9 ball.
And that's what we have to protect, is making sure that the players have that option. We already see the language in the contract.
Choose whatever they want to do.
We always see we have the language in the contract. Remove language from the contract. That's the first step. And I'll do my best to convince the WPA not to ban anyone immediately. And they already said that if that was even decided, because everyone's so gung-ho assuming it's already said and done, which it does not. It's just one topic of a million topics to discuss at the General Assembly. But if that occurs, is the point. Let's start somewhere. Let's start removing that language, and let's start removing that thought, and let's start focusing on who has what roles and who can grow the sport in their own ways, protecting free enterprise and governing all disciplines equally across the board under an umbrella as a unified organization, as a unified body. Or let's just put all our eggs in one basket and hope it does the same thing for pool as it did for darts, which is the same thing like what's the beanbag thing called? Not football. Cornhole. Yeah. We can't hope. Players today don't have 10 years. Mortgage will not wait 10 years. Expenses will not wait 10 years.
But Ed, I mean, you're saying like we need to protect it and move it all up like the industry has to go up as a whole, as opposed to letting 9-ball go up as a whole. And like, I just don't understand why 9-ball can't go off and do its own thing. Why we have to control that aspect of it. There's nothing stopping Derby City from saying next year that, hey, we don't want to work with Matchroom at all. We're just going to go back to our own event, and we're going to sanction with the WPA. That's not going to take anything away from the Derby City. I mean, they're still going to have players coming from across the world to play in that event. Why can't Matchroom just have their own little thing, do whatever they want, have their own rankings, have whatever they, do whatever they want to do. And if they overlap on an event, let the best event win. It's the true form of capitalism, right? I mean, it's letting the market work.
That's free enterprise.
Exactly. I mean, if
Predator wants until there's a problem with scheduling, which has been 1,000 times, until there's a problem with coercing players or trying to get players special treatment, which I've seen and have done as well. Again, I don't want to put that publicly out there. There's 1,000 reasons that one organization cannot be declared as the official organization, as far as a profitable organization.
But even though history has proven with a couple of other sports that it is the best way forward for the professional game.
If we get to that point where there is feasibility and let's say the bottom 48 players out of 256 or top 48 players out of 256 can get paid and break even, we revisit the discussion. But for right now, to sign paperwork is very foolish. That's putting the cart before the horse.
I don't argue with that. I mean, what you said right there, I'm absolutely okay with. Yeah. What I don't want to see is a WPA event or a WPA going to Matchroom and say you have to play by our rules until you get to that point.
General Assembly is coming up. Nothing has been signed. Nothing's been signed.
Based off of that, I mean, this has been a pretty big ruckus across the industry, but really the only thing that's been happened so far is a bunch of people are throwing poo at each other from across the street, right? Nothing truly
here's a fun example. Everyone's comparing this to the golf industry, excuse me, with the LIV and the PGA Tour, right? But guess what? They came together to work together as promoters. Those are two promoters. They both answer to the IGF, the International Golf Federation, right? So it's obvious in every single sport in the world, there's a governing body and then there's promoters. There can be multiple promoters, but there must be a governing body to allow free enterprise.
Well, they came together to create a monopoly. And there's monopolies at the top of pretty much every major organization.
I don't consider that monopoly. I think those are leaders. They're leaders, Not necessarily monopolies because there are no laws in place saying that some other organization can't come along and do it. The LIV proved that.
Well, and then what did they do? They became a monopoly. So even when it's not a monopoly, they make sure that it becomes a monopoly.
But no, a successful business can monopolize. However, it is not written by their governing bodies that LIV couldn't come along. Their governing body, the IGF, allowed the LIV to come along, right? We have to have that that path and passageway open and available for the next big thing to come along and join forces. It's not if or. It's not if this or that. It's everyone together and allowing more to come in.
What is Matchroom doing that is stopping Jim and I from hitting the lottery tomorrow and making a multi-million-dollar tour that starts in December? What is Matchroom doing that's going to stop us from doing that?
Is it a 9-ball tour?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
You can't call it this. You can't call it that. You can't call it 9 ball. You can't call
Apart
it
from
open.
trademarks. Apart from a
I've
couple of
seen emails
trademarks.
before. They don't even own those trademarks.
Well, there you go. So there's nothing stopping us.
So
Real
what's
quick,
stopping it?
they gave hell and flat out threatened legal courses of action for claiming to own words of championships and 9 balls in the past before. I've seen emails. Okay?
That's fine.
Where
Jim and I will come.
Okay.
Jim and I are going to come and create every VG1, VG2, VG3. We're gonna make a series of 75 VG events across the world and across the calendar. And Jim and I they're all gonna be 9 ball with the same exact rules as Matchroom, the same exact promotion. Hell, we'll even have the same exact sponsors and the same exact setup. What's stopping?
Carl Boyce and commentary.
We're even gonna poach Carl. We're even gonna bring
I agree
Carl
with
over.
Carl.
What can
I like
Matchroom do to
Carl's
stop us?
commentary.
What is Matchroom gonna do to stop us?
Anything and possibly can. That's to be seen. We can't talk hypothetical in the future. Can't talk hypothetical in the future. If they want, why do they want to own 9 ball?
They can't do anything.
Why do they want to own the points on 9 ball? They're just still going to have the top players' names if they're in contract. If they can't play any other 9 ball event, remove that
Those
language.
players can leave. Those players can leave and go somewhere else.
No, they can't. If they're signing contracts, they're not allowed to play in any other 9 ball event.
You know what?
Without written permission, like a child.
We've got enough money that we can back them out of all the contracts.
Yeah, you'd never be able to enforce it.
I just think that if Jim and I put
together,
well, if Jim and I put together the VG tour, and we started saying, all right, we're gonna run the U.S. Open 9 ball champions. We're gonna do that. Of course, Matchroom can come and say, no, we actually have the rights to this. You can't do this. But if we have the VG9 champ U.S. Or we just call it the U.S. VG championships. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, there's nothing that they can come
you with a lawsuit as they have in the past, and you can't use the U.S.
Okay, then we'll just say the
VG. I don't want to put the dirt out there. I really don't, because I want.
There's so many ways around it, though. It's kind of a moot point. So many ways around it.
But what Matchroom is trying to do is Matchroom is trying to control the things that they own a license to, right? They're trying to control their product, which is the U.S. Open. It is the World Pool Championships. They're trying to control those things just like anybody else would do. But there's nothing that's going to stop us from coming in and starting a tour called the Pooflinger Tour, and we have Pooflinger Stop number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And they're all 9 ball events with the same rules, all that stuff. There's nothing stopping us from being able to do that. Matchroom can't come to us and say, well, we have the World Pool Championships, so you can't have the Pooflinger Championships. I mean, there's nothing stopping them now from being able to do those things. And
stop the players from playing with you.
No. They can stop the players from playing they can stop the players from playing an event called the U.S. Open 9 ball. But they can't stop them from playing in the Pooflingers Championships.
I've seen them attempt to shut down the International Open in its early stages.
Because they called
International Open's birth. Because they all called it the U.S. International Open 9 ball championships. So it took out
because you're playing on a product
that they own. No, it's not a product you own. You change one letter, it's a different product.
Yeah.
This Open Championship versus
X. Impossible to enforce. Impossible.
I guess. But what I'm saying is they're trying to protect a product that they own. If it's going to be anything close to that, they're going to try to protect it. Whether they're in the right or wrong there, if they would have never called it the U.S. International 9 ball Open and they would have called it the Pooflinger Open, Matchroom wouldn't have said boo about it.
You say Pooflinger too much.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with what that is.
All I'm saying is
we can stipulate, but there's language in the contract to fight, and there's things to be determined, things to be seen. Again, we go back to the point of sustainability. I hope it is sustainable. I hope there is a tour. I want to see a resolution. I don't want to see it Matchroom versus WPA. Just as you find it disturbing, I find it disturbing. The Matchroom and WPA have worked together for decades upon decades. And everyone was playing their role. And if Matchroom's doing a better role at their role now, then we just ask the WPA to do a better job at their role in the future. Bingo. And we ask them not to ban. That's it.
Bingo.
That's all we can do. We can stick it along.
So who would the WPA listen to that could walk up to them and say, guys, you need to improve? who would that be? Who would they listen to? Because at the moment, it seems like they're sitting in their ivory tower. They think that they think they're brilliant.
Well,
And
both
everyone else
are
has to
doing
listen
this.
to them.
Let's not leave Matchroom off the hook there either.
You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. Snooker, pool, carom, everything, hayball. Just pointing fingers at them. Who are they going to listen to that's going to say, listen, you're going to have to start changing things because this isn't working?
I believe that's already begun before this all began, before this issue began. That conversation had already started with the change of boards within the DCA, and I know that trickles up to the WPA level as well. They have a new president, a new vice president, new board members, younger blood, fresher ideas. They're all, again, 90% volunteers.
And to be fair to Shane, Shane Tyree, I did have a conversation with him at the International Open with an off the record, we'll say, at late at night conversation about just exactly that. And he said that it's just going to take time. And there's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of things that have to go on behind the scenes. The one thing is with Matchroom, they're so good at marketing that every single possible decision that they've ever made about the history of forever, it's a post on Facebook. I mean, their marketing, whether they think about changing the 5-ball colors and it would have 5 million shares on Facebook because they're a marketing company. They market the hell out of everything. WPA, like Ed said, they're designed to just work behind the scenes and get shit done, right? They're not promoting all of their decisions that they make. And when you don't do this, a lot of players look at them as saying, "Oh, what the heck are they actually doing?" They do a lot of things behind the scenes. And I've never been a WPA apologist. Anybody who watches the show knows that. But if they are getting younger, more sleek, better new ideas, whatever they're doing, and we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, we're not seeing these decisions in real time or at all. How do we know? How do we know that this isn't the WPA of the early 2000s or the 90s or whatever it is?
When do we get to see what happens?
Why
do we need it? I guess the WPA would probably say, "Why do you need it?"
They start learning how to advertise, and certain events are put together, or certain organizations are put together. Free lessons for kids and things like that start to come to fruition, and then advertisement will be there. Again, I've been serving for 3 years. One of those years have been during the COVID, so we did nothing but meet once or twice, I think, during COVID to discuss nothing. What are we going to do? What's the future of the world? And nobody knew anything. However, things do take time. If you're willing to give Matchroom 10 years to develop $1 million prize purse, or 5 years $1 million prize fund, great. Give I have the same thing for WPA. Give this new WPA administration and all federation administrations the same amount of time to make strides forward, just as we're giving to everyone else.
That won't be possible, though, if the WPA ban players, right? Which is Sean's intention, clearly.
I don't know if it's his intention.
I don't think it's his intention.
Hang on a second.
I think he made a bad judgment call by saying
that. He might have let his mouth go, but you don't think that's his intention?
He certainly hasn't backtracked on it from what
I think that's the only answer he could come up with at that moment in time.
So is he fit to be in charge of the well-governing body?
He's a very modest and not an outspoken person. I don't want to call him timid, but he's very reserved, very quiet, very relaxed. He has a certain relaxed demeanor about him. So is he a politician? Is he a promoter who's always on a microphone in front of the camera with just the right things to say or deflections? No, he's not. Does he have the overall benefit for the game and the players at heart? I do so believe.
And lots of people do, right? Lots of people do. But I think
so with direction of many federation components, and Shane and others, there will be a sensible resolution figured out.
Within the idea of there being changes made within the WPA, which need to be made. Is or not? Changes need to be made. We agree changes need to be made within the WPA. There needs to be some serious shake-up. There needs to be a whole new. Everybody needs to be in the same direction. Is it not more beneficial for everybody if pool as a separate entity has its own governing body, and that the WPA are not involved with all different cue sports? That snooker has its own governing body, that they are not intertwined with each other. I find that all I find that all very, very complicated and very dangerous. That something can happen in the snooker world that will affect pool players and vice versa.
See, this is where pool is unique. Bowling, there's 10 pins and a point system in place, and you have 10 frames, and you know what bowling is. In basketball, there's one set of rules. You know what basketball is. There's not multiple disciplines.
There's not.
You know?
That's not a good example.
That are accepted. Or I don't know of any.
I've only done 10
things.
What you're saying now is exactly what Matchroom are saying. That they want it to be one game. They don't want it to be complicated with different games and different rules and different stuff like that. That's why Matchroom is doing 9-ball, because they want the outside world to see pool as just being that's pool.
Right.
That's
But
pool.
we can't negate everything else.
Carl Boys has said it loads of times on different ones. The majority of people who are not in the pool world, they see pool once a year in the Mosconi Cup. Comes on Sky Sports. They know Earl Strickland. They know the guys that played in the Mosconi Cup. They know 9-ball. Here in Europe and throughout the world, actually, American pool is referred to by people outside of the pool world as 9-ball pool. That's what people say to me. Jim plays 9-ball pool. You know, people who don't play pool, they say he plays 9-ball pool. Say, there's more. And if you turn around and say, yeah, there's 10 balls. Well, what's that then? Yeah, it's an extra ball. And this Carl Boys makes a joke about it, but people do look and say, what's the extra ball for? Yeah.
What was it? 2016, Carl won the 10-ball championship.
No, he won the 8-ball.
8-ball.
No, I remember. I'm sorry. I remember he beat Shane. It wasn't a finals. He didn't win it. He won the 8-ball that year. But yeah, I'm going off the top of my head. But I remember him beating Shane. I think it was 11-9. Was it being some 10-ball event? I can't recall where. It was an X-Stats event.
Shane must be having a bad day.
But again, yeah, I didn't finish getting to my point as far as that. Yeah, you're promoting one game, and we want an understanding. But the WPA's responsibility is all games, regardless. Now, to be represented by other federations, yeah, we have other federations locally by continent, but to be further broken down than that, those committees on 8-ball, committees on 9-ball, so forth, there could be 1,000 things. Could there be? That's to be seen. Should there be? Do we have the manpower, the footwork?
But my question to you was: should pool be a separate entity from the rest of the Q sports? Should all the Q sports be all separate entities?
Good question. I have to really think about that.
And then does the WPA then have the same? Then the WPA is an umbrella, and they have governing bodies under it for all of the different disciplines of pool.
WCBS is already
9-ball, 8-ball, 10-ball.
That may be a possibility. Perhaps that may be a possibility, as long as that stays open for that all to do so.
Well, do you think that would be a possibility that WPA could find a negotiation with Matchroom on? Say, all right, fine, we're going to diversify our umbrella, and we're going to now individually govern each individual game to give each individual game its own credit.
Wasn't that already done in the sense going upward with the WCBS, the World Confederation of Billiard Sports, where you have snooker and you have pool and you have carom? There are already governing bodies of each discipline out there. But you're talking about a different. I can't even say disciplines, different games. Snooker and disciplines are games within a style of play or a Q sport. But
I think everybody would agree that.
How far are we going to split hairs as far as what needs the governing body? A promoter is a promoter. Promoter doesn't have to be governing body.
I think that everybody can agree that pyramid, snooker, and 9-ball pool are different disciplines of Q sports, right? But I think that if you took a poll of most pool players, they would say that 8-ball and 9-ball are very similar games, much more so than English 8-ball and 9-ball.
Well, it's quite simple. It's simple to do. The same players play 8-ball, 9-ball, 10-ball straight pool. It's played on the same table with the same size balls.
Same table. That's it. Same table.
It's the same table, same size balls, same colored balls most of the time, and it's the same cues and it's the same people playing.
The skills are transferable.
Not playing snooker.
No.
Shane Van Boney's not playing snooker. Why should he be punished? Why should he be punished by something that happens in a snooker tournament? Like the Singapore guys were. It's wrong. They're completely. You cannot say that Q sport is a sport. Q sport is not a sport. It isn't.
No.
It's a group of sports that are being overseen by one body, and that's like turning around and saying we'll put soccer and rugby together. You can't. Why would you have one governing body for soccer and rugby at the same time?
Or even American
one
football
governing body.
because they're closer.
Right, but there is a one governing body for baseball, softball, and softball 5 handicap.
Yeah, okay, but that's
whatever, but it's similar, I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but there are governing bodies that there's just not enough people and manpower that will volunteer their time to govern a fraction of a discipline of a sport.
That's a real.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's not a fraction of a discipline of a sport. Pool is a sport in itself. It's its own entity. It's not. There's not another sport played.
To be more official.
Yeah.
Right. Pocket billiards. Let's say pocket billiards. Pool's not even a real name of the sport. Let's say pocket billiards versus billiards, and then maybe we reorganize the names, and maybe this will be a thing. Maybe this is a good idea.
Well, I think.
Let's assume. Carl, will you volunteer to do that? Carl, Darren in the chat. Anybody?
Let's assume quick that let's assume that the bridge between WPA and Matchroom is mendable, and that they can get back on the same page, and they could put the water under the bridge and continue working together going forward. Let's assume that. I don't think that that's the case. I think that the bridge has been blown up. Yes, I think that this is untenable at this point. I think they're probably done. But let's assume that they can.
I don't agree.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I don't know. There's been a lot of poo flinging, but I know I'm always back to poo. I'm just always back to poo.
It looked like it was dead in darts as well, but then they came to an agreement. But eventually, the BDO just disappeared.
Yeah, an agreement is a really mild way of putting it.
No, but the governing body, there was a separate governing body that was created that then the PDC went to. The PDC isn't the governing body. There's the World Darts Federation that is a governing body. The BDO was only the governing body for British darts, but it was basically the World Darts because darts was only played in Britain as a competitive professional sport.
Okay, so let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to pool here. If you're saying that you can't do the umbrella, right? You can't do the individual like WPA governing all the 10-ball, 9-ball, 8-ball, banks, one pocket, all of those games independently because they don't have the funding to do so. Well, wouldn't having a World 9-ball tour that has 44 events, all giving 2.5% to the WPA, wouldn't that kind of help with your funding problem to be able to do that?
I'd like to see that.
I mean, maybe with a World 9-ball tour as part of this, they can actually have the funding to get a few more bodies involved to be able to do something like that.
Who in their right mind would want to try and govern all of those different disciplines?
Exactly.
Who in their right mind would want to do it? You'd never see that in any other business without a lot of
you'd legitimately probably have to have two people. One that's actually doing the 9-ball, and then one that's doing everything else.
I think realistically, you're talking about.
And then you need one for 10-ball, one for one pocket, one for.
But that same person can do. That same person can do 10-ball, 8-ball.
No.
Straight pool one. Why? Because it's a third of the job.
If you do one, you do them all.
I nominate Nate.
If we do that, and everything is the exact way that it is right now, there's no way that as is the Matchroom and WPA can get back on board. There's no way.
There's no way at the minute they can get back on board. There's just no way.
The only problem that sparked all of this was wanting ownership of a point system, and there was a little bit of rule changes, like the 9 on the spot versus 1 on the spot. We need to have standardization across the board. Can't re-educate the whole entire public. 10 balls played with 1 on the spot, 9 balls, 9 on the spot. It's just lines were blurred as far as roles went. There was no problems for decades upon decades. So why not go back to that, but alter it and move forward with what we've seen happen thus far, the benefits of Matchroom, as well as consistency across the board and around the globe, cooperation.
Do you think there's a real possibility that over the next couple of years, the WPA just dissolves and disappears because they no longer have any hold on the largest majority of pocket billiard sports? 9-ball goes off on its own, and the WPA becomes, it's at the moment, for all intents and purposes, from a professional tour standpoint, it's not fit It doesn't exist. It's not important.
I don't believe so, because even if, let's say a worst case scenario, 9-ball goes off on its own, as you said, there's still 10,000 other disciplines of sports, of key sports, that need governing, that need organization, that still work together, that no one else is playing.
But I think you'd agree, 9-ball is the lion's share of, 9-ball is by far the biggest. Yeah, 9-ball is the biggest discipline by a long shot. Definitely.
Well, I don't know. I really don't know. I think whatever Matchroom had chosen would end up being the biggest one, because
I absolutely agree.
They are promoted to the wider audience.
I agree, but as things stand,
larger audience and promotion.
Yeah. It's not the game. It's not the game. It's what just 9-ball. They just chose 9-ball because they've always done 9-ball.
In fact, probably 10 years ago, if we were having this conversation, we'd probably be saying 10-ball at the professional level.
8-ball.
Yeah.
No, 8-ball. 8-ball is the game that the world knows. If
the
you
largest game out there is 8-ball.
Yeah, if you walk into a pool hall and you see two amateurs there that are just on a night out having a couple of beers, they rack up a rack of 8-ball. They
yes,
don't rack
at the
up
amateur level.
But
what we're talking about is
we have hayball, we have English 8-ball, we have black ball. There's other versions.
They're very different games, though. They are games that, not rules. They're games that can be played at professional level. 8-ball on an American table is serve, and you have to hold your serve. It's too simple a game for professional players. Hayball,
that's why what we're talking about here is professional pool. And if you'd asked this question 10 years ago, everyone would have been saying 10-ball. The fact that it's 9-ball now is only because Matchroom came along and decided to do 9-ball. 9-ball was kind of a dead game after like 2007, like the whole Corey soft break thing. I mean, the 9-ball was pretty much a dead game at that point. I mean, that's why 10-ball took off as fast as it did. There's no way that we would have been saying 10 years ago that 9-ball was this clear and obvious favorite to be the dominator of pocket billiards.
Well, if you told me 10 years ago that Matchroom would be doing this, I would guarantee you it was 9-ball.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't disagree with that. But we didn't know 10 years ago that Matchroom was going to be as powerful as they are.
Well,
they had 3 events 10 years ago.
I can tell you now, I've been going to the Moscone Cups in 2010. I've had multiple conversations with Darren Appleton since 2010, with Carl Boyce since 2010, with all the top guys from the Moscone Cup, the American players. And since 2010, and probably before 2010, all they were calling for was for Matchroom to start a world tour. They're saying, we need Matchroom to start a world tour. Well, here it is, guys.
And at the time, they had 3 events.
This is what they're getting. The WPA, they better get on board with it. They better find a solution, because Matchroom won't look for a solution with them. So the WPA have to come up with something.
Going back to the responsibilities and duties of an organizer, an event organizer versus a governing body. Again, so yes, WPA, correct. I believe.
You're correct. I understand the difference between the two, but if Matchroom feel they do not need the WPA in order to get to where they want to go to, then they leave them behind. Barry Hearn said it very clearly. He said, "I will take you with me, but you come with me. I'm not going to ask you twice or pull you. You either come with me or I'll leave you behind."
And they've done it before, multiple times. They'll do it again. They've got the infrastructure.
The advantage that the WPA has over the BDO with the darts was that they have more. In essence, all they're losing is 9-ball. For them, as a sanction, all they're losing is 9-ball. They still have a lot more that they can still survive from, if we talk about survival.
Sure.
And I still feel that they have a legitimate role and a legitimate place in our sport.
Jim, if you were head of Matchroom, would you think that? If you were head of Matchroom, would you say we're better off going forward without the WPA? If I'm head of Matchroom, I'm thinking, this is brilliant. They just cut their nose off to spite their face. They're gone. We're going forward on our own. We don't have to.
No, I think Matchroom would have been okay with the deal that they offered them in the first place about having the ranking.
I bet they're happy now. I bet they're happy.
Well, I don't think they're too bothered either way, because they, like I said, they've done it before and they know they can do it.
Yeah.
If the ranking is that important, what's the problem with the ranking being accepted or not having to be the only one?
They wanted it to be the recognized 9-ball world rankings. to be
it is
recognised by the WPA as the they wanted it to be recognised by the WPA as the 9-ball ranking, the sole 9-ball ranking.
And
the only one, no problem.
Not the only ranking, the only 9-ball
yes.
ranking.
Yes, but Ed, they're trying to do. Yes, but they're trying. I mean, Carl has said this a million times. Emily has said this a million times. They're trying to get everything down to exact uniformity, right? So how can you have one set of rules where the 9 is on the spot? You have to break from the box. It has to be a forceful break. You're using a template rack. All of these different things on a 9-footer with 4 1/4 inch pockets. Everything is uniform except there's 17 different ranking systems. Like they're trying to get a sense of uniformity to everything, including the rankings.
All of those good things you said about the game, the form of the game, break box, setting of the rack, everything. Matchroom listened to the players. They went to the players and said, "What can we do to make this better?" And they listened.
Yep.
That's such a
the
key ingredient.
Can be said for not the last couple of years, but as recent times. But in the past, there have been player representatives on several boards on federations and WPA as well. Kelly Fisher sits there now. You don't think the things are heard or listened to? No, they're taken into consideration. They're voted on.
I'm not saying they weren't listened to before.
Yeah, but it's just
I feel like just from being at Matchroom events, and then the further I dig and the more I talk to players, there is a respect given to the players by Matchroom that has never ever been given to the players by the WPA, and the players appreciate that. They want to be respected. Yeah. They want to be seen as superstars. It's not all about the paycheck. They're devoting their life to this. They've become elite at something, regardless of what it is. It deserves respect. Whether it's pool, whether it's that hacky sack throwing that ball in that sack in a hole. What is it you call it?
Can you start that again? What is it called?
Whatever it is, you've worked hard to become one of the best in the world. You deserve respect. And the players, for many, many years, felt that they were getting no respect from the WPA, and they feel like they're getting respect from Matchroom, and they will follow Matchroom. If it comes down to the players deciding, I can tell you now, the pros will follow Matchroom. And they will do it without a second thought.
We're there already.
They're there already, and the WPA can make threats through under threats. It won't matter. The threats that are being made now are the same as the threats that were made in the darts, and the players followed Matchroom. And now the world champion gets $500,000 for winning the world championship.
I hope there's a resolution to this where everyone can work together. That's what my hopes are. That's where my preaching is going to go. That's where my vote's going to go. Working together to move forward all together. So there's no division, that everything moves forward and work together as they have for decades in the past. Replying to something in the chat room now, cornhole, as silly as we find it, anyone can do it. And they have kids competitions. I saw a couple kids doing it on one of my TVs the other day that were playing in the pool room. I saw a junior division where they were making $10,000, $20,000 for like 7th place in cornhole. But why isn't pool on ESPN? Does anyone understand the structure of ESPN? It's not because they choose to put us on, it's because you pay to be on. You have to pay a time slot. So if any organization is leading and wants to put their money where their mouth is, we need in the U.S. to be on ESPN, not shady, networks that where I have a DAZN subscription for the new $250 amount or $250 amount is, whatever it is. Pay for a time slot on ESPN and put 9-ball on there. Put the Must-Win Cup on there. Should be. It's quick, it's fast. We know it's a show. It's not a true competition. Put the money where the mouth is. Let's get on ESPN. Buy a time slot. That's how you get on ESPN. It's not that you get lucky. And let's put on there.
Yeah, that's not possible because Matchroom.
Why isn't that possible?
Because Matchroom as a whole, as an entity, have a deal with DAZN, not just pool. They have a deal for boxing.
For everything,
which is huge. That's Matchroom's leading.
And their deal for boxing is too much to go ahead. So they've just added pool to it.
Yeah,
and that's why. Yeah, that's why they can't be a governing body, because they're bound by contract and by.
But they're not a governing body.
Right,
they're not trying to be a governing body.
With points and with rules and with they are.
They're not trying to be a governing body. They're just saying we're doing this, and you come with us or you don't.
I don't have a problem with
that. Body. It's like you said before, anyone could do that. They can turn around and say, I'm putting a tournament on next week and I'm putting 40,000 more money in it. I'm not asking anybody to sanction it. I just do it You've come to
I
you
don't have a
know.
problem. I don't have a problem with them doing their thing as a business, wanting to create opportunities, but do not try to combat the governing body or take over portions of roles of governing body in a portion of a discipline, where it's causing divide.
But if
Do
they
it in
choose,
conjunction with.
it goes back to my question at the beginning. Matchroom are not required to be governed by the WPA. Nobody is required to be governed, so they don't. They therefore don't answer to the WPA.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand. You say that they're going against the WPA. No, they're just not going with the WPA. We're not asking you to sanction our events.
The actions of scheduling on top of other events intentionally to try to steal players away causes rift and does not have
Allegedly, intentionally.
Well, hang on.
No.
It comes
The
to a
UK
point where
Open
it's
could
going to
have
be
been
intentional, right?
4 days later. The UK Open could have been 4 days later to avoid all of that. That's it.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, why shouldn't they?
There are things that are said and there's things that are done on paper that, again, it's not my place to put out on public forum. I don't believe in that. That's poor business practice. I've just seen a lot of poor business practice on that part. And again, I'm not on either side. I work with one, and I'm happy to work with the other one again if things work out. I want to see the best benefit for players overall. I want to see multiple events on the calendar, and I really just hope that there's a resolution for this in an organized manner that benefits all equally across the board, not just a percentage of players, all players in all disciplines globally. And that's the
All right.
responsibility.
So let's wrap this conversation up. We've gone over 2 hours. It's been honestly a really fun conversation. But I before we close out, I want to hear everybody's prediction. Where are we going to be at in 3 years with this situation? Ed, what do you think?
3 years from now, both organizations will exist. There will be some type of compromise where some events will be part of the WPA calendar and points events, and some will not. And that will be a choice of the players. So the small portion of players that are there for marketing purposes in the invites or the shows will be a separate point system than the overall point system, which will also include some matchroom events.
Jim, what do you think 3 years from now? What the hell is that?
What do I think and what do I think and what do I want, or what do I want? I would like to see the two of them get back together and come to some sort of arrangement. Like I was saying, I think that's the best for the game in general. But I think in 3 years' time we will be wherever Matchroom decides we are. I think they are calling the shots and the ball. I think. Honestly, I think the WPA are going to have to get down on their knees and make some promises and make some changes to get Matchroom back in. Otherwise, it's Matchroom are just going to go and do their own thing. And good luck to them, to be honest, because I've been massively disappointed in how professional pool has been handled for many, many years now. And it bothers me that, I mean, you got a great champion like Darren Appleton here on the chat. The guy should be a world-renowned superstar. What he achieved in the sport, in any sport,
And Earl.
and he's not. And a large portion of that is down to the WPA.
I've always wanted to kick that off my podcast.
It just disappoints me. And like I said, a lot of it comes down to the WPA, not just the WPA, but I just think that pro players have been left out to dry. And if Matchroom are willing to pick up the slack on the pro players, good luck to them, let them do it. And I don't care if it's 9-ball, 10-ball, one pocket banks, whatever. Give these guys a platform where they can be superstars. Yeah. He's putting that T-shirt.
I know. I saw the T-shirt. I had to get rid of it before he pulled it up.
Is he really going to pull up that? Errol was a millionaire at one time. He just blew it all. He can't blame the WPA.
His ex-wife is to blame for a big part of it. Luckily, no, those are the board.
Matchroom will be in charge of professional 9-ball, and the WPA will be clamoring to keep some control over something that looks like a structured amateur association. That'll probably be it. that's the way it's heading already. So
fun. Who knows? I guess time will tell. I do know that. I do know one thing. Matchroom is all in completely. So, I mean, until something derails that, and I don't even know what that would look like. I don't see why Matchroom wouldn't be full steam ahead 5 years from now, and maybe the Mosconi Cup is paying out $50,000, $75,000 per player. Maybe the U.S. Open has a $750,000 prize. Actually, was it already? What is the prize fund for the U.S. Open?
300.
60,000 first, so it must be 300,000 something like that.
Yeah, so okay. maybe the U.S. Open's giving away $500,000, $750,000, something like that. Who knows? There's probably a World 9-Ball Tour that consists of 50 events. And as far as the WPA, I think that they control their own destiny. I mean, I think that if they can put some pride aside, there's one thing that I do know. Matchroom will not care who they leave behind and who they bring with them. They've proven that. I mean, they looked at the Predator money and said, boo to your money. We'll go find somebody else to work with. If not, we'll just, pull in a third party or something. Matchroom has made very, very clear at this point that they're not interested in working with anybody who's not interested in working with them. So I think it's going to be kind of up to the WPA what they want to do.
Let's be clear on one thing. There's only one group of people that can stop Matchroom from doing what they're doing, and that's the players. They're the only ones that can stop Matchroom doing what they're doing. If the players are on Matchroom's side, it's happening. They're gone. The WPA can't stop them. The IOC, nobody can stop Matchroom doing what they're doing, other than the players or Matchroom themselves if they decide they've had enough.
And I can't think of a single player that's against Matchroom.
I haven't spoken to one professional who said, maybe it's better. No, they're all in. They're all in on Matchroom. Matchroom.
Any real players? Any
present day relevant players? Yeah.
Hey, I get to deal with them on a daily basis. I can have my fun with them too. Okay, you don't have to deal with them every day.
I'll tell you what. Joe Rogan can have whatever he wants. You got the best Earl impression. I'll give you that.
Thank you. I'm not going to do it.
Come on, man.
Can't do it. I got to be in the mood. I have to have 2 drinks at minimum, 2 shots.
All right. Well, Ed.
That's the problem, you guys. You don't think you know pool. You don't know pool. Matchroom can go kiss my ass. I'll shoot the liver off. And he doesn't like that line either. Darren sitting over there. Darren won a Wii Ball championship. He doesn't even know what this game goes for. Yeah. You guys really know pool. You got to spin the ball. You got to sit in there putting balls. It's not putting balls. It's not putting balls, I tell you. We packet balls. We pocket them with spin.
That's a problem with players these days. Players don't know how to spin the ball. How are you going to make a ball if you don't know how to spin it?
Right, I think that look, we're all going a bit loopy now. I think this is going long. Hey, Ed, thanks very much because you only said you had half an hour.
Yeah, Ed, you were brilliant.
I'm late for work. My volunteer elderly employee is going out of his mind right now. Paul Lead, shout out to Paul Lead real quick. He volunteers in exchange for, barters for pool time, helps out, watches the shop a couple of days. I'm an hour and a half or 2 hours late for him now, so I'm going to get my butt chewed out. So, Carl, accept my friend request. I was trying to reach out to you in chat privately a couple of times, but
no, you don't need friends with me.
Emily's not going to like you not keeping up with your social media. You better answer.
Well, I do appreciate you joining on and kind of being a punching bag. I know that you don't represent the WPA.
Well done.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks very much, Ed.
But you're one of about 6 people in the world that seem to continue to have their back at this point. So,
and the chances of anybody getting anybody now from the WPA on a podcast is zero.
I'll tell you what. I'd like to see 3 WPA representatives and 3 Matchroom representatives, okay, of their choice, on the same podcast, with a moderator and a 60-minute timer to get points across, with a bulleted information packet of what topics and what points are going to be discussed, not 15 minutes before they come on air. That's for Windows Open. That's for Queued Up Podcast. That's for everybody out there.
I tell you what, anybody that can make that happen, they get the podcast crown. They can have it.
I know that I'm not getting it. I'm not.
Three from both
I'm
sides.
not even trying.
That'd be pretty cool if you got like Barry Hearn and Emily and A and other.
Barry probably would not. Maybe Barry would. I don't know. He's very well spoken, and he is a genius. You know, he's proven himself several times. I don't know why Barry's never got along. Barry Hearn and Barry Berman actually never get along. So I don't know if he's turned over his grave for a guy when his kids sold the US Open to Barry, but I think the man's a genius, business genius, and everything, and we need that. You know, there's no argument that we need to work together. That's what I think. How that's to be determined. Some older better guys, they're gone.
There has to be, in any case, there has to be at least one more effort made to try and get this. And if it breaks, it breaks. But I think I have a feeling that the WPA are going to soften up on this slightly, and there may be room if both parties just soften up just a little bit. There may be some way, because they do have to soften up. Nothing's going to happen the way things are just now, and with the things that are being said and the things that are being done. I have a feeling that the WPA may soften up after talking to each other on the 7th of October. I hope they're sensible enough to realise that they can't push back too hard on this, because it won't get them anywhere.
You've seen the press releases instituted or released by the federations. A couple federations out there, the Belgian Federation, a couple others have made statements. There's a lot more people that are more level-headed and trying to find resolve as opposed to flexing.
So I think too many people are reacting too quickly.
Yeah. There's a lot of speculation. I don't think that's going to, really go.
All right, guys, that was good fun.
Thank you very much for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. All hate you.
Yeah. Well, the normal closeouts. Thank you again to our sponsors, Jacoby Custom Cues, for making this happen. Insight Performance Coaching, Billiards Digest, Salado, Digital Pool, Onboard Sportswear, Horo Tips, and for all of the Patreons that allow us to continue doing this too, which Ed Liddawi, you are one. How fun is that?
I put my money on my office everywhere.
You do that. You cannot.
Surely,
if it's pool, I'll put my money there.
We'll only let him stay for 2 hours because he's paid for it.
One of their sponsors? No.
Is what?
Was Matchroom? What? You didn't hear me? Now all of a sudden, those expensive headphones don't work.
Well, he's got his WPA.
I could be real bad. Yeah. No, Nate, those I love them. I've always had a liking for them. I don't know why, but thank you very much, guys.
So we'll give a shout out to the other Patreons that allow us to continue doing this. Double Dave Q's, Dave Wiersma, Mo Bashir, Cody Wettig, who was in the chats today, Ed Liddawi, who's on the show today, Matt Poland, who was also, I believe, in the chat today, and Morgan Lupton. We have other ones, but those are the ones we could shout out. So thank you to everybody who is a patron and allows us to continue doing this. Thank you to all of our sponsors that allow us to keep doing the show. And thank you to Jim, Chris, and Ed for joining me today. It was an absolute just a blast. It's just so much fun.
Darren Appleton wants to sponsor you, Dynamic Billiards.
I do have one of your sweatshirts.
That's going to be another $20 a year that you're going to get. You'll be loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll buy dinner sometime. That'll be good. I'll tell you what. All joking aside, we don't besides Onboard Sportswear, we don't have any sponsors, and we work. You want to buy the most comfortable hoodie you're ever going to buy in your entire life. Hook up Darren. Get with Darren. Get his hoodies. Those things are absolutely fantastic.
How much is a sponsorship? If I may ask on the air, if you're willing to vote. I'm sure it's posted anyway, but what's the sponsorship level cost? I'm only a Patreon, but what's the sponsorship level?
For a month, it depends entirely on the company. Well, it doesn't depend on the company. It depends on how we work it out. So if it's a straight cash homie, it's $200 a month. Yeah. But we work off of trades as well. Plenty of trades.
Should we not stop the podcast before you two guys start hashing out sponsorship?
I think the podcast needs more sponsors. I think sponsors also need to step up. You don't want to get me going on what real sponsorship is. Here's a piece of chalk. You're my little bitch now. No.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that at some point.
Another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Episode, I think. All right, we'll close it out. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week.